OTB AM.
The Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball.
Alright, very welcome along. It's Monday morning after the All-Ireland football final. Dublin are the All-Ireland champions. We'll be back and forth to the team hotel this morning in the hope, the forlorn hope, that maybe some of them are available for comment before 9:30. In the meantime, we're going to sift through the wreckage of Kerry's season. What happened? Were they the better team on the day? I don't know. Were Dublin the better team? I'm not sure. YouTube.com/off the ball. We've got a full house for you. Shane, good morning to you.
Good morning, how are things?
Good. Nathan, how are you?
Good morning.
Oh, you're not very enthusiastic about this at all, are you?
I am, yeah.
Do you hate the Dubs as a Mayo man?
No, do you hate the Dubs as a Kildare man? I know you've. I know you like to nearly see yourself as one of them now, but
oh, look at this! Look at this!
Ouch. It's the worst thing you can say to someone, isn't it? Someone who moves to the capital and then you're accused of turning into one of those people.
Kerry were Mayo-esque yesterday, weren't they? In that the game was right there for them. They could have won it, and they kicked some uncharacteristic wides in the final few minutes. But it's right there for them. No.
yeah, it was. I think if you look at that spell, even not accounting for the David Clifford misses, there was that spell around 55-60 minutes where there was 2 or 3 really bad wides, a couple of just wild, reckless shots, and maybe that's down to strong Dublin defending and the pressure Dublin are starting to exert at that stage. But it did feel as though there was a little bit of panic, a little lack of confidence in Kerry at crucial stages of the game, and I think overall Dublin deserved to win it. Now, look, at 74 minutes on the clock, there's not a player in the history of the game you want in that position than David Clifford to just knock it over the bar with his left foot, and it doesn't happen for him. And the winning and losing of the game is that David Clifford doesn't get anywhere near the standards we generally associate with him in that second half. You know, he kicked 2 brilliant points in play. The ball for the goal is a wonder ball, but you would have expected every other day that David Clifford kicks 3 more points and they win by 2.
Yeah, you know, it's so how much of the credit for that goes to Michael Fitzsimons? A lot, you would have to say, but some of it. So Michael Fitzsimons played well and David Clifford played badly. These two things are not in opposition to each other, and I don't think it's cause and effect either 100%. I think Fitzsimons played well as he could do, and I still think that some of the stuff that happened to Clifford was unconnected with how well Fitzsimons was playing, if that makes sense.
You're spoiling our performance rankings.
Okay.
You're spoiling it.
Here's what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock for you this morning. The performance rankings are imminent. After that, Anthony Moyles is going to give us his thoughts. We'll preview the final game of Ireland at the World Cup with Kathleen and Linda Gorman. After that, we have Paul Caffrey. We'll be back at the hotel, and we'll bring you some highlights from yesterday's pay-per-view, where they were talking about the impact of the All-Ireland final kind of disappearing into the ether a little bit on a national level, and some post-match reaction from Colin Boyle as well. So at 7:33, 9-time All-Ireland champions, 3 of the Dubs. Let's get going with the performance rankings.
You know, that wasn't an All-Ireland winning performance.
Probably should have won the game based on their second half performance.
Is it acceptable to say it was the performance so far of the World Cup? Maybe not.
OTB AM's performance rankings.
I'm scratching my head. Performances with just lack that intensity.
Boom. Right.
I think we'll start with the green. We start with the green. We should start with the green this week. We should start with Dublin this week. We'll be singing Molly Malone by the end of this show. That's how into this we are. 115 to 113. Not going to go down as a classic, but in the conditions, it was tight, it was tense, the sides were level on 70 minutes. It was kind of everything you wanted in terms of the closeness of the game, and it felt, looking at the reaction of the Dublin players and listening to them afterwards, that this meant a hell of a lot, that despite the 6 in a row, that they took the criticism that they've received even just up to a few weeks ago. I think even after that Roscommon performance, we're still getting it in the neck that the stick they took over the last couple of years, they took rather personally, but they got the band back together. Dessie Farrell, I think, deserves enormous credit for, Avengers assembled, got every bit of expertise they possibly could involved through absolutely everything at this, and they needed it because it was probably, the introduction of Jack McCaffrey, the brilliance of their bench that just got them over the line at the very end. And I think overall they did deserve to win that game. Their game plan, it was very defensive for large parts, but brilliant on the counter-attack. Sort of knew exactly what they were about. Their defence was far stronger than Kerry's throughout the game, and then their forwards did enough. They kicked the points when they mattered in the final stages of the game. So for a lot of these players, like for Cluxton to come back to win a 9th All-Ireland, for Mick Fitzsimons to have what arguably should have been a man of the match display to win his 9th All-Ireland, for James McCarthy to be in the running for Footballer of the Year as he wins his 9th All-Ireland. Like, this is stuff we're never going to see again.
Yeah.
Until next year when 4 more to win their 9th All-Ireland.
Will they though? I definitely felt like this was last dance territory for a lot of them. Speaking to multiple people who are well connected within the Dublin GA community last night, there was a sense that this is the end for many of them. Like, so Dessie said it's not even the I can't remember the exact quote, but it was basically like, it's not just the owl lads who are thinking about retiring here. There are loads of people with a lot of miles on the clock who you might not anticipate,
a lot of medals,
are thinking of going.
Yeah.
And I was like, what does that mean? But again, talking to people last night, they were mentioning very unexpected names who have just had enough, that like the daily grind of getting up and doing everything that you possibly can all year long to try and win All Ireland. When you've won as many as they have, it's not as alluring anymore. Somebody said to me last night with a straight face, they won't even win Leinster next year. Like, this is like,
they won't win it by 5 or 6 points, or they won't win it at all.
They won't win it at all. I was like, well, I mean, that would be great. It would be great, but I think
does the allure ever drop off? I don't know. Like, Dean Rock seemed to indicate that he was probably done, and you can understand he's not starting games. He's coming on for the final few minutes. Listen, he's kicking the final point of the game, and it's an important point. Maybe Kerry have a chance to go up if he doesn't kick it, but he kicks it as he always does. But even for James McCarthy, like, you're not a bit part player. You're not getting a few minutes here and there. If James McCarthy comes back, James McCarthy starting. All 3 of those players who won 9, if they come back, are probably starting next year. Like Kieran Kilkenny, Brian Fenton, yeah, they got a lot of yards there done, but now's not the time you step away. Not when you're making and having the types of performances that they're having. Step away for a year, perhaps. Look at what it did for Mannion. Look at what it did for McCaffrey. But I think Brian Fenton should be Footballer of the Year again this year. I thought he was exceptional at big moments in the game yesterday. And
you won't get it though.
Is Michael Fitzsimons not Footballer of the Year?
There's an argument. I think he should have been man of the match yesterday. I think Clifford is the winning and losing of that game. We all know it beforehand, and I would give Fitzsimons far more credit maybe than you are there for like the first half.
I think
the way they stopped the ball getting in.
But I still think Clifford played badly as well, and I don't think it was just cause and effect. But I don't think it was the smothering pressure. I think that, like, because Clifford missed some fairly open opportunities and was going for goal instead of taking points.
That can be down to Fitzsimons though, because he got in his head.
Maybe. But like,
you saw the video of Fitzsimons and Costello pre-game.
I didn't. I heard they were beating the crap out of each other.
Absolutely level. Like Costello
was in the back of him.
It was very physical, but like
definitely at one stage it looked as though Fitzsimons was looking at him going,
"Is this a scrap?
Are we going to do this? Are we going to do this today?" I think there was definitely a mental side of it that Fitzsimons, they restricted him so much. And Clifford in the first half, every time he got in the ball, and it was rare, did the right thing and was brilliant. But you go to that last opportunity, like Kerry couldn't have worked that better to level it up for Clifford, and he misses it. But I don't know, I find it very difficult to sit here and be critical of David Clifford in any way. Maybe he took too much on his shoulders. Maybe he has to take too much on his shoulders on that Kerry team. It did feel in that second half at times, particularly was it the wide out on the right hand side that he just hooked Moyles up and there was a player who made the run through and he had to give it inside and he took the shot on, that he's thinking what we're all thinking is, we're not going to win this game unless I kick the points to win it.
Yeah.
Where actually maybe there were opportunities for him to set somebody else up, or maybe actually they weren't going to win the game unless he kicked the points to win it.
Hindsight's 2020. He looked a bit nervous pre-throw-in, like even puffing the cheeks walking around. He didn't sing the national anthem. I don't know.
Is there a lot of hindsight? Because I was wondering that last night watching the Sunday game. He comes off the bus and there's a big...
Yeah. It's the same in the parade.
Now look, the other thing is David Clifford, lost his mother less than 3 months ago.
Yeah, of course.
He has been through a huge amount of personal turmoil. I'm sure he's thinking back to last year's All-Ireland final and what an occasion it was for the family, and it's a very different experience from yesterday, and we don't know how that plays on him as well. So I think if there's anybody who deserves a little bit of leeway, and I think you can see from all the analysis there is quite a bit of it.
And that contextualises Paudie's performance as well. Like, he was brilliant.
Well, if Kerry win, Paudie's probably man of the match.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
Like 3 brilliant points. But I think the Dubs, with the level of, like, you think back to 2011. So 2011, the first All-Ireland. Pat Gilroy's the manager. Pat Gilroy's on the sideline yesterday as the water boy. Brian Cullen's the captain. Brian Cullen's there on the sideline yesterday. Kev McManaman scores the goal. Kev McManaman's there on the sideline yesterday. Stephen Cluxton's in goal. Stephen Cluxton's still playing. James McCarthy's still playing. Like, they've kept this massive level of expertise and everything they've gained over the years, and they're still all there, involved in different ways. And look, Dessie has to take credit for like allowing Pat Gilroy back. It may seem like an obvious thing to do, but you have to be quite humble to go.
I don't think it was obvious at all. I think everybody was very surprised that it happened. Like, and that he's as high profile and involved. It wasn't a quiet thing in the back room at all. Like, literally in the parade, he's the one giving them their drinks. I think Dessie gets all the credit here and finally gets out from under the shadow of the previous managers. And again, I wouldn't be terribly surprised if this is the end of Dessie Farrell's time as manager of Dublin.
Yeah, for sure. I was thinking that yesterday as well. Why would you go again?
And to the point about they'll keep going because they all keep going. I don't know. I think there's a good chance that several of them decide to take a year break and that Dublin look completely different next year. Because McCarthy didn't sound like somebody who was like gearing up to go after 10, did he? Did he not sound like somebody who like?
No, he did. It was definitely a.
We'll see over the next few months. But
I wanted to go out and on All Ireland, and I have it now. So maybe I'm done. Look, I think, Jared, there's a mixed analysis of your post All Ireland final gossip. I think last year you restrained yourself. You'd heard that Shane Walsh was going to kill McCudden, and you never said it. You had the good goss that time. So maybe we need to put a bit more trust in what you're hearing.
Okay. So my
don't give your source away.
My informed speculation. Who's going to take the Dublin job? Like, it's obviously very difficult. So it'll have to be somebody.
Pat Gilroy.
To your point, I don't know. I suggested that. I was told that's unlikely, but maybe not. You don't know until you ask.
Stephen Cluxton.
Well, certainly if you were going to be setting a backroom team together, you'd be asking a bunch of those people, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you'd be, I think Brian Cullen's full time with the Dubs anyway, right? That is his day job, right? Am I right about that? Would Declan Darcy be interested in the job? He might be, and that would be a continuity candidate. Would J.O. be involved? He's obviously. The impact that J.O. had on Westmeath, the longer the season went on, seemed to be quite pronounced.
McBowen?
Maybe, yeah. There's definitely loads of available candidates.
It'll be a dub anyway, won't it?
Performing at a very high level. Yeah. Maybe if Banty was available, might he be interested?
You're going to put your mate in Malachy, are you?
Well,
I think Malachy might be the man to take them to another level.
Any kind of be stupid not to have him.
There's obviously a change at the top at Dublin as well. John Costello is finishing up. I think maybe this was his final week in the gig. So they've generally got their big decisions right over the last few years. But again, I think you go back to the way they've kept people involved, and you just imagine it's not going to be one guy who's just at the helm. They'll, whoever the manager is, Cullen, you'd expect will stay. Kevin McMenamin will stay. Like, these performance coaches that they have around the place will make sure that the standards are there. And like, Jack McCaffrey could not have been more bullish last night about what's coming next. That when I got back in that dressing room, I knew within a week we were going to win the All Ireland. And you know what? We're going to win lots more All Ireland when I look around that dressing room.
Did he say that?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so that would suggest that he's sticking around.
It didn't. No, I didn't get sense at all from Jack McCaffrey. This was a one and done. No. I'm just coming back to save things. I'm coming back because, as Jack McCaffrey is, it's better for my life to be here, and I like doing this.
Well, let's wait and see, right? Because they're going
to have about 8 players left the way you were talking.
Well, is Mannion staying?
Wishful thinking.
I got the sense from Mannion the same as Jack.
Right. Okay.
Look, this is from the interview, obviously in the hotel last night, but certainly got the sense that Mannion was going to keep going. But then you don't know. Like, these lads, obviously last night they're going to give nothing away. But Dean Rock and James McCarthy's language was very much
we're on the way out.
We're at the gap, like.
Yeah.
That's certainly the sense you get. And obviously after the game, they're all getting photographs. Look at the lads, and
McCarthy could easily go again. To your point,
yeah, he's only 33.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So he's 10. So they're the greatest ranked footballers in terms of the number of All Irelands that they've won ever.
Yeah.
Like, as you said, it's history, and it's never going to be beaten unless somebody from their team, their squad, does it.
But they're in the GPA box next year, and Henry Shefflin's sitting there and going, "Show me your 10 All Irelands, lads." Yeah.
Is that 10 sounds nicer?
Is that the position you want to be in for the rest of your life?
10's much better.
And is there a bit now where they've beaten Kerry, and Kerry, like, they're in Kerry's heads now? Like, is it easier for them to beat Kerry next year, or did Kerry come roaring back angry? Like, so there's
not much between them.
The gossip in Kerry is that Mark O'Connor's coming back from Australia.
Same. Down in the Kingdom last year or last week, I was heard hearing the same, and it's not just a Ty Kennelly one and done. It's back for good.
Yeah. So they'll be stronger, fitter, leaner. I thought Kerry were brilliant yesterday. Just a couple of mistakes.
Well, can they hold on to Paddy Tally? Like, he's been a key cog, and again, the word I was hearing last week was that in that semi-final against Derry, generally speaking, at half-time, Paddy Tally will do a lot of the talking and kind of have the plan and the team talk. And apparently, of course I don't know this for a fact, Jack O'Connor pulled rank at half-time of that All-Ireland semi-final and said, no, game plan's out the window, we're pushing on them, and they went and obviously basically destroyed Derry in that second half. So it'll be a rare thing for Jack O'Connor to do, I'd imagine, at half time of a match, but yeah, I think they should hold on to Paddy Tally if they can.
I don't think Kerry need to panic. Like, when the sides are level on 70 minutes as it ticks into injury time, who you tipping to win?
Yes, the Dubs.
Yeah, the Dubs. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Oh yeah, in yesterday's game.
What? Yeah. Yeah, for sure. The greatest team of all time who've won, like...
I still thought Clifford was going to step up.
You think so?
To win the game or to
win the game. Like, the sides are level.
Yeah, no.
Like, there's nothing between them at that stage.
I thought it was more likely that we were going to have extra time.
Yeah, well, I definitely thought they'd find a way that we would get extra time and a replay out of this. But look, it's definitely hindsight in... you look at the Dubs over the last couple of years. Like last year, Seanie O'Shea scores the point in the semi-final for Kerry to beat them. They're not that far away. The year before... much as it pains me to say, there's an element of freakishness in how Mayo come back. Like, they're toying with Mayo for most of that game, and they switch off, and Mayo take advantage, and they come back and they beat them. Now, there's been a lot of bad stuff in there as well. The relegation from Division 1, the general sense of flatness around the place, even at large parts of this year. But on the big championship games, like, the unfortunate thing for this group, and as much as people have spoken about how great it is for the lads who've won 9, I think it must be very special for the likes of Lee Gannon, like Colin Pascal, the guys who've had to sit there and basically listen for the last 2 years of like they were. Like, these lads are nowhere near.
Pascal might have 4 or 5 All-Irelands now. He's been in the squad for like loads of those, but not seeing enough game time for him to think.
And not that, like, yesterday's second half, steps up, scores a couple of brilliant points. Obviously, he's the match winner against Mayo in the quarter-final. Probably going to be an all-star.
Yeah, he could have been hiked at half time, and nobody would have said, okay, that was a bad decision. But actually, his second half ends up being a match winner in many respects. It's his interception, isn't it?
Yeah, right at the end. Goal. Look, 10 sounds good. Cluxton has 17 Leinster titles. Would you not like to get to 20?
Yeah, I'm sure he would.
Nice for around 20.
Yeah.
It was an anti-climax at the end. I don't know what it felt like in the stadium, but because the Dublin go 2 up, and I'm thinking, Kerry are going to get a chance to push up for a goal here. But then as soon as the 6 minutes is up, Goff blows the whistle. It's like, I wanted one more. I wanted Kerry to push for a goal.
Talk about the referee, and I was like, the whistle is blown at 75 minutes and 4 seconds for the free kick. So you give the other minute.
I think I did. That would be the only tiny criticism I would have of an otherwise brilliant refereeing performance. I thought at the game. So, anywho, let's keep going.
Also in the green, it's also going to be a Dublin Kerry ladies football final on Sunday week. Dublin beat Cork 2-19 to 13 points, so comfortable enough win. They started quickly, they played with the wind, they built up a big score. Hannah Tyrrell scored an early goal. I think it probably should have been ruled out for a square ball. Just kind of played a quick 1-2, and she was back inside the square by the time the ball came back. But Dublin were convincing winners. It's going to be the first time ever Dublin and Kerry have met in the ladies football final. 30 years since Kerry last won the All-Ireland. They beat Mayo 116 to 111. They lost their captain, Siofra O'Shea. She picked up a cruciate injury in training last week, so obviously going to miss the final as well. But they were keen to point out as to what a big influence she was, and text came in straight away saying, not about me this week, let's concentrate. Louisa Murray-Hurtig, the best player in the country right now. 110. So these are the two teams who were beaten by Meath in the final over the last 2 years. Meath have obviously had a change, have had a dip, so it will be once again Dublin Kerry. So that is Sunday week in the ladies football final.
Yeah, like Omar Hurtig's performance was scandalous. Niamh Hurtig, I should say. Unbelievable, like brilliant goal, like just scoring points from all over the place. So I think Kerry might be the team to beat, even though like a 9-point win for the Dubs over Cork is hardly to be sniffed at in a semi-final. Cork obviously have been there, done that over the last number of years, but yeah, it just feels like Kerry are maybe on another level. So that's going to be a cracking final, I think, in in that one, definitely, for sure. And not a novel pairing, Dublin and Kerry, yeah.
If there'd been a replay, it would have been a Dublin Kerry weekend, the Saturday and Sunday. The men's would have been Saturday evening and the women's would have been Sunday afternoon. That would have been a good weekend.
Yeah, it would have been pretty nice. Festival football.
Yeah.
We going to the Amber?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Vera Pauw is in the Amber. Hard to believe, considering the months of build-up we had to the World Cup, that it's all coming to an end today for the Republic of Ireland. And maybe, and in all likelihood it feels, this is going to be Vera Pauw's last game as Republic of Ireland manager. There was a very tense and tetchy press conference yet again down in Brisbane ahead of the game, where Vera Pauw has been asked as to, have you heard anything? No. Have you heard anything? No. Would you like to hear something? Well, obviously, yes, I would like to hear something from the FAI. But there's been complete silence from Jonathan Hill. He told all the journalists who were over there he would talk to them while he was in Australia and have a bit of a briefing. He hasn't said anything, and there's been no support at all from the players. There were 4 players up for media on Saturday. Megan Connolly was up yesterday. All asked the same question: do you want to stay on? And they all sort of came up with the exact same stock answer of we're just focusing on the next game. This is the World Cup. This is what we're all about. So it feels that all of the things that have gone on off the pitch have come together at a very bad time for Vera Pauw, and that she doesn't really have the backing of the dressing room, and that it probably is going to come to an end, which I think if you were to look at it from a purely footballing point of view, it's very hard to make a case that Vera Pauw doesn't deserve to stay on, considering what she has achieved in getting Ireland to the World Cup, and I think performing really well in their first 2 games and arguably getting better in these big games. But it's the other stuff. It is the accusations that have been made against her. I think it's the timing in particular of the accusations in the Athletic piece just before the World Cup, like that press conference with Katie McCabe the day before the France game. That felt like a line in the sand. Again, Katie McCabe had an opportunity to back Vera Pauw. Everyone will have seen her really sarcastic response at the end of the press conference about thanks for all the questions about the World Cup. Like, this overshadowed Ireland's build up to the World Cup.
Do you think it had an impact in terms of our early exit?
No, I think Ireland played really well. Like, again, they're playing 2 of the best teams in the competition, 2 of the strongest teams, and you can get in, and we will get into the tactical analysis of has she got the best out of Katie McCabe, has she got the best out of Denise O'Sullivan, but Ireland haven't been that far away from a position of where they have been in recent years. She has brought them on massively, but I remember being out in Abbottstown the day of the initial accusations, and Vera Pauw couldn't have been stronger, more vehement in her denials of everything that was said, but she was also incredibly strong on that. That's not me. That I am not that coach. I'm not this aggressive coach. I am a very soft figure around these players. I'm a very supportive figure, and at that stage that didn't stack up to, like, it felt like there was almost having to be 2 extremes here, where actually, Vera Pauw is, and I mean this in the best possible way, she's very Dutch, like she's very to the point, she's very straight with her answers, and she pushes the players. And like Katie McCabe's response then in the press conference before the France game, where it's like, we go at each other, like we challenge each other, but we're professional and we put it behind us and we get on with our life. And again, that's probably most dressing rooms, but you definitely got the sense from Katie McCabe that day that the players were pissed off that this was coming the day before their big send-off, and that Vera Pauw had approached the Athletic. Now, I know Vera Pauw says that they had come to her with a survey, and she had gone back saying, well, why didn't you talk about what players do to coaches instead of the other way around? And then they went and spoke to the players over in Houston again, and it all escalated from there. But like this has felt since then that like this is Katie McCabe's team more than Vera Pauw's team, and that Katie McCabe is the driving force behind this team. But I think the silence from the FAI says it all.
Vera was clearly pissed off the FAI in that press conference yesterday, the day before. Like, she was asked, has this had an impact? I guess the contract weight, and her answer was just yes, and stony yes to Tony O'Donoghue's question.
See, the problem for the FAI is so they have backed Vera Pauw to the hilt. They came out that first day and they said, we believe in our manager. So why then are they not offering a new contract? If that's the case, now they could argue things have changed, the players' attitudes have changed, the players are very frustrated. Maybe there's a sense it's an end of the road, like Vera Pauw was interesting talking about. The natural cycle is 6 years for a manager. I think 6 years is when players and managers get fed up with each other, which would bring her on to 2025. Maybe the end of this cycle is now, if there is that real intensity to her management style. And these players have been together a long time now. They've had, since they've qualified, they've had 2 lengthy training camps. They've had about 6 weeks together. since the squad came together for the World Cup. It's a lot of time in each other's company, and maybe there's a natural break, but from a purely footballing point of view, it would make you nervous, I think, about what comes next, who comes next, and how Ireland kick on as they, the next game after this is at the Aviva Stadium against Northern Ireland.
Yeah, which is supposed to be like a massive celebration and something close to a full house. So, look, there's a watching brief here, and obviously there's a big game that we should be talking about, really.
Yeah, absolutely. 11 o'clock kickoff in Brisbane. I don't think Vera Pauw should be thinking about rotation massively. I think the physical, mental toil of the first two games means it's probably a bit of a natural couple of changes in there, but there's a lot at stake for Nigeria here, and if Ireland were to switch off and think, well, let's just give everybody a game and have a good time, you could end up at the end of a bit of a beating, which would leave a very sour taste again at the end of a World Cup where they've acquitted themselves very, very well. In saying that, you do look at the couple of players who haven't played so far, and if you leave the keepers out of it, and unfortunately the life of the sub-keeper is maybe you just don't get that chance. But Diane Caldwell, 96 caps, I think made her debut in 2006, played the night over in Scotland, surely deserves a bit of a run out at the World Cup. Chloe Mustaki's story is one of the best stories in Irish sport, deserves a run out of the World Cup. Ciara Grant has been there, came back into the squad, having retired again. Does she deserve a bit of time? Clara Reardon is probably next in line defensively. So those four outfield players, maybe she gets an opportunity to give them some game time, but I think as much as is possible and as fit as players are, you go out full strength and you try and get something from this game.
Okay, on to the red.
In the red, Ger, we're going to go booing the ref. We go booing the ref first. Shane was passionate about this one. I was...
What was it like? Was it loud in the stadium?
It was very loud in the stadium.
Yeah. It was totally noticeable. Yeah.
But is it something that normally happens that the referee is... So Larry McCarthy thanked David Goff.
And his officials, yeah.
And his officials. And David Goff's picture went up on the big screen. And there was a loud boo from the hill.
And Goff was laughing.
And Goff was laughing, which was the best thing
about it.
And
then Larry McCarthy says, no.
Yeah.
Like an old school principal.
And I think David Goff was able to laugh because even David Goff, I'm sure, knew at that stage, like, there was no big incident here. Okay, after every game, both sides are going to feel a little bit aggrieved. As I say, maybe there should have been a minute extra at the end. Give Kerry the chance to get that goal that we have a Seamus Darby moment that we're talking about for the next 100 years. And it's one of the greatest moments we've ever seen. Maybe Kerry are annoyed about the James McCarthy hit. Like, it was very, very high at real speed. Could that have been a red card? Possibly. He'd had a few in the first half. This is in the second half.
Who's it on? Is it one of the Kerry halfbacks?
Who stays down injured for quite a while. Sort of clotheslines him.
Or was it Moynihan? Moynihan went off that stage, didn't he?
So he clotheslined him. But it was probably it was too close to the face. In real time, it was one of those, in Gaelic football, it's almost always a yellow card. When you watch it back on the replay, maybe it could have been a little bit more. There were probably a few other incidents. The Clifford one that was overturned. Now, when you look at the replay of Clifford and Fitzsimons, where they both get yellow carded, and originally the free kick had been awarded to Kerry, probably the two of them are at it, and maybe it's good refereeing again that you talk to your umpire and say,
is that not like the best example of excellent refereeing, where he gets his ego out of the way, admits he made a mistake? I wouldn't have booked them both.
Well, I would agree. I think you're dead right. Didn't let his ego get in the way, but then probably did almost overcompensate by going, well, the two of them are in it, so I'm going to book the both of you to show that there was something a bit more going on here.
It did stop them from doing any of that stuff afterwards, Yeah.
Well, and that might have been his thinking of, listen, I'm not going to have the next 15 minutes of you two pulling lumps out of each other. Book the two of them, and that'll put a stop to it.
Well, you were asking this morning before the show, like, did you enjoy it? Was it a good game? And but for David Goff, it would have been so much worse.
I think he basically, it was like a Kilkenny hurling training session for the first 25 minutes where he swallowed. Exactly. I think we were 11 or 12 minutes in, so Clifford scored a free, but other than that
was the first free given,
was an obvious one, and it was about 10 minutes in.
Yeah.
And before that there were loads, like the fussy referees early in the championship were like, there's been about 5 fouls in that you could blow for. He's like, no, let's go. And maybe because the conditions were the way they were, but people were literally taking the ball off each other in a way that generally is like, oh, you can't do that, that's a foul. But actually, I thought he was excellent.
Yeah, well, I was right down pitch side, so much so I'm bringing out a book on Jack O'Connor and Mike Quirke's conversations during the entire game. I was well, you could hear them in the first half because it was so flat, and it was as the nervy sort of tense game. Now there was nothing overly exciting in what they were saying to each other, but you got a real sense of the tackling and the quality of the tackling and the ability to turn the ball over. And again, if it wasn't for the boos at the end, I don't think we'd be talking about David Goff in any way. Like, he did a really solid job, and there seemed to be a sense that it was the Dubs booing him. It was surely the Kerry fans.
I think
still stuck in the hill.
The Dubs were pissed off that he gave Clifford. So Clifford has a shot that goes wide and then gets called back for like the tiniest little. On the replay, you can see that he pulls the jersey. That Fitzsimons had pulled the jersey, and I don't think he needed to because Clifford was shooting wildly and was missing. But then he kicks that point, and the Dubs are like, "Oh, that was not fair. Well, that's ridiculous behaviour." What? Yeah, we haven't called it all game. It's like, yeah, well, he saw it though. It's a foul.
So I don't know if you were on the hill. Let us know. The sense was that, well, obviously the Kerry fans got out of there as quickly as they possibly could.
Yeah.
So why would they be booing? They wouldn't have been on the hill. But actually, I think there was still a huge amount of Kerry fans on the hill, and surely the Dubs aren't booing the ref. I don't know. Maybe everyone just boos the referee. If you put the referee on the big screen in any game, everyone's going to boo him.
Kenny the Dad wants to know: can we give an honourable mention to the bizarre lineup of pitch side commentators the BBC had? It did seem as if the BBC had like one of those. So Dara Breen, Paddy Keelty, Paul Mescal,
and
Adrian Dunbar,
from Glenny Judy.
Was Seamus Coleman on with them as well?
Yeah,
because he was photographed. Aisling O'Reilly was talking to him before the game, and obviously Seamus is Dessie Farrell's first cousin. But he was photographed with Patrick Keelty and Adrian Dunbar outside. I didn't see him pop up, but again, it feeds into that bigger conversation of All Ireland final day, All Ireland weekend, what it can be, what your coverage should be, how early the coverage should start, like a parade of celebrities. And in fact, everyone, you didn't look at any of those four sitting there and go, that's a bit cheesy. No, actually, no. Here's four guys who are coming along who are going to enjoy the game, who all have a little bit to add. A bit of razzmatazz. There's no harm in it.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think the BBC have one more press box seat than RTE, if I'm right in saying. Someone told me that last week. So like, obviously they're using
our
them.
press box seats, but go on.
Well, yeah, but yeah, it's funny to see them using them in that way. Like, it's.
Well, they were up they were up in their box.
Okay, right, yeah.
So they have a broadcast box right beside where RTE's broadcast box. They took the old Sky broadcast box, I think it is. So they had the four of them sort of squashed in there.
That's a good idea. Grow the game. Dion Dublin, the likes of those lads, throw them in.
It was live on BBC Two, was it? So Richard Cole's tweeting about it during the week.
It was strange because last week the hurling final, as far as I'm aware, was only on BBC Two Northern Ireland. Where yesterday's match was on BBC Two for everybody in the UK to watch.
Mainstream UK not ready yet for hurling.
Well, Damien messaged this morning on YouTube. Got to watch my first All Ireland final shown on BBC Two in England. Great watch. Is that right?
Hurling.
Oh, the hurling, was it?
What are you
football?
asking?
No, but the first time it was on terrestrial TV
in England.
That's still a thing in England.
Yeah. That's so step forward.
Well, just good coverage. A little bit of like, we're thinking about this in a way that other people aren't thinking about it. Oh, you can have these people. Well, I mean, is it too much for us? It is. We can't. No, sorry. Too busy being boring. 3 minutes past 8. Is that it?
We have one more.
Kerry in the red, Ger. Kerry in the red. You lose in All Ireland, you end up in the red. It's simple as that. What did they do wrong? I think if you were, it was hard. We could have a good debate, I'd say, about who the man at the match was from a Dublin side. I think like Cluxton, 100% from his kickouts. Was it 44% of their scores started with Cluxton? They worked them all the way up to the pitch. I thought all the way through that team, like from Fitzsimons is obviously a contender. Brian Fenton, we were probably debating before, and I thought Fenton at the big moments in the game was again the one who just scored 2 great points.
Did score 2 great points.
Calmed it down.
I thought Jack Barry was great. So I thought was your point here? Who in Kerry would you say?
So I think for Kerry, you were looking going. Well, Paul Gainey scored the goal, and there was a sense of maybe we thought Gainey was gone, but he actually comes back and he has his big moment, and he was very solid. I think Paddy O'Shea was brilliant. Paddy Clifford was brilliant. Paddy O'Shea things might have been different. Paddy Clifford was brilliant. And aside from that, Like they just...
I thought the defence was excellent. Like Costello was going to be an all-star up until the final, and Tom Sullivan marked him out of the game. Tom Sullivan, maybe you would have, in a different day, have scored a couple of points.
Ran out of steam at the end. He was gone for those last couple of Dublin scores. He was gone.
Shawnee O'Shea started very, very well. Like his accuracy was good, and then the Gavin White moment was the turning point, wasn't it? Like
I thought Kerry's halfback line struggled. That's the bit where there was too much space at times for Dublin to kick those points. Like the couple of Fenton points, he just strolled through.
Yeah, but that's I don't know. The halfback line are actually marking, and that's where Paddy Tally's defensive system broke down. Like Dublin were carrying the ball straight to the centre of the Kerry defence, and no one quite knew what to do, although it didn't cost them as much as it might have done with a few goal chances. Yeah, they managed to get turnovers. So look, I actually thought the Kerry defence was excellent, and they did their bit, keep Dublin to 115. Dublin are going to score 20, 22 points, but they didn't.
Wasn't that, but in the conditions, I don't think it was ever that type of game. I think Dublin defensively set up so well. They forced them down the wings, they forced them down the channels. In that first half, when Clifford was getting the ball, he was getting it miles out on the sideline. Yeah, for the goal it didn't matter because he was still able to create something, but then Dublin just burst on the counter.
I think Con didn't score, is that right? Con didn't score.
You'd said that before the game, you'd be like, Dubs aren't winning this game.
Costello taken off. Like, I thought the Kerry defence was excellent, but anyway.
Con hits the crossbar, of course, that unbelievable shot. Like,
hits the crossbar. So somebody was giving out about him taking a mark in the semi-finals. In one of the bits that we'd done, it was like, I'd say somebody would have had a word with him, you go and you next time don't take the mark. Actually, if he'd taken the mark in the first half and just taken his point, he might have got into it, but he catches the ball, brilliant catch.
Takes on Morley.
And the ball spins off the outside of his boot, and it's a wide. It was like, wow. And then did he one clear off the line as well? Early in the first half?
Paul Gainey had... So Gainey had the very early chance. It was actually going wide, and the Dubs cleared it off the line.
Right, okay, it was going wide. Okay. All right, 6 minutes past 8. Anthony Moyles going to join us in just a second. First, here is a clip from the pay-per-view yesterday. Philip Lanigan of the Mail and former Dublin footballer and CEO of Teneo, Mick O'Keefe, joined Joe to go through the Sunday papers. Here talking about why the All-Ireland final day should be a national holiday.
OTB AM's performance rankings.
I think there's an issue with All-Ireland finals weekends, and I think I would argue, and I know you slightly disagree with this, it needs to go out a little bit and go into August and push into the second and third weeks in August for loads of reasons, promotional reasons, and also, like, surely our All-Ireland weekends should be like Super Bowl weekends, right? That's what we should try and do. So there was a time where the Sevens was a big occasion. That's kind of happens and you don't even know it's on. Sevens was part of the weekend. Fellas would come up for weekends of All-Irelands. I was talking to a fella in the office the other day from Kerry, and he's 30 or 40 mates coming up. I said, how many of them are coming up staying the night? One, I think, is staying the night. They're all coming up the morning, down the morning. It's not the sense of, there should be a festival on in Dublin on an All-Ireland weekend. It should be at a time where you're given a couple of weeks to plan it. There should be music, there should be a match on before, whether it's a camogie match for the hurling or an underage game or a developmental, something on to get people in a bit
earlier. A sense of Croke Park's alive for the day.
Fan zones, all that stuff should be there. And like part of that should be a celebration of people from 25 years ago. Like I'd love to have seen that Offaly team, and I'd love to see a little mini documentary because they were all great characters. I think it's a Galway. Is it Galway? 98 Galway. What a team!
There in 98. Yeah,
what a team! And like, you know, that was one of the best displays in an All-Ireland final ever. I'd love to see a rerun of that game. There should be a dinner and a banquet for them the night before. Get them out in the pitch, you know, and let people kind of recognise them. So I think in this instance, I think maybe this is simply the fact that, you know, you can put things down to this post-COVID, you know, we haven't really found a rhythm yet and stuff, and the dates kind of still, I personally don't like it, and I think I haven't even gone on my holidays yet and the All-Ireland finals are over, you know. So I just feel it's a bigger conversation around the final should be a weekend of celebration in the capital.
You make the point very well. So the weekend feels a bit bare at the moment, and I'd say there'd be a great appetite. Anything you put on, I think people would love to go to.
OTB AM. OTB GAA.
You go back through all the great managers, coaches in the GAA and hurling, like teachers have had a huge role. And I would say myself, like the skills and the tactics and all, that's one side of it. But just getting the players to believe, getting the players to buy into everything, like that is huge.
Subscribe to the OTB GAA podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts.
OTB AM.
The Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball.
Anthony Moyles is with us. Anthony, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, gents. How are you doing?
Yeah, so explain what happened yesterday to us.
Okay, where do you want me to start, Ger?
Well, why did Kerry lose?
Why did Kerry lose? Okay, a couple of things. Well, they had an off day up front. Okay, that's pretty obvious. And the man who was, being hailed coming into the game as the greatest ever, had an off day, and he had. I think a lot of that is to do with the way Dublin set up against him, and a lot of that was to do then with his own frustration and his own maybe weight of expectation on his shoulders. And due to that, he started to, which a lot of people do, and he's only human, and lots of sports people do it, he started to snatch at things, and he started to go for things that he probably should not have gone for. There was at least probably 2 or 3 shots that he took on where you'd kind of go, wow, if you're really going well and you're slotting everything over, that goes over. But when you're trying to find your rhythm and you're frustrated, as you could see when he was kind of pulling his hair and, clenching his fist after 1 or 2 easier mistakes, those scores don't go over. And the defender knows they don't go over. And all the defenders around you know they're not going to go over, and they give you plenty of stick for it. So I think that was a big outcome on it, Ger. We said last week that if Mick Fitzsimons kept him to probably 7 or 8, he would be doing a serious job. And he kept him to what, 3?
3, yeah.
He ended up. So, I was kind of having an argument a little bit on Twitter last night with people, or I wouldn't call it an argument, let's say a discussion.
Not like you.
No. Well, I thought Fitzsimons did an unbelievable job, because again, like stuff we mentioned over the last few weeks, people don't notice the stuff that defenders do where they're covering off 6 balls in a row and they've managed to cut them out, and then the forward gets that 1 ball. Like Fitzsimons was doing an unbelievable job on him, and a lot of times when fellas are given man marking jobs, they just stick to the man, and they kind of turn their back on the rest of the play, and what happens is other fellas get on the ball and get easy scores. But if you watch him, even on the very, very last one in the 72nd or 73rd minute, he actually, Clifford passes the ball and he actually goes to someone else, and the ball switches back to Clifford. But you could see his desire to try to help his defenders. Now Clifford ends up, clipping it wide, and you probably as a manager would say, Jesus, why didn't you stay on him? But I thought his display was fantastic. I thought Fitzsimons was, for me, with the pressure he was under coming into that game, psychologically, going in, as I talked last week about going to bed on Saturday night, what he was thinking of that daunting task of taking Clifford. He had help, but at the same time, he was plenty of times left one-on-one with him. I thought he did a fantastic job. And, fellas were saying, loads of times he was on the ground, it was just down to Clifford's bad shooting. Yeah, but Clifford would have only still, in my reckoning, got, 6. And as I said, even if he got 8, I would have taken 8 if I was marking him. I'd say, Jesus, I'd give him 8 all day long, and then try to see, can we restrict the rest of them to kind of 5 or 6, and we get out the gap. So I think that was one of the reasons, Ger.
Is it overstating it to say like it's a generational conversation changer, his performance yesterday? Like if Clifford goes and scores the 8 points, we're sort of saying like Mick Fitzsimons, these lads are probably past it. They've probably stayed on a couple of years too long. Whereas now actually we're celebrating 9 All-Irelands for him, for McCarthy, for Cluxton, and actually wondering why the hell would they leave now?
Yeah, you're probably right, Nate, and that's the thin edge of sport, and anything can and the narratives are written after it and all those different things. But I think the younger lads, I think like Pascal was a major difference in that game in the second half. We spoke last week about putting him out to 11, and I think when he moved out to that half forward line and ran at the Kerry defence, that caused them absolutely umpteen problems, like major issues. Mannion the same when he moved out. Mannion was having a good game overall, but Pascal's difference in that second half I thought was fantastic. McCaffrey's introduction was unbelievable. I still think, Nathan, it feels like the last dance for a number of them. And I think, you hear the interviews afterwards with Dean Rock and a few of them. I think there's definitely a sense that this was the one they wanted. I got a text message off a Dublin fella I know, and he knows Cluxton fairly well and Cluxton's father well, and he was just saying that Cluxton's father was saying that this was the one, and this is the one that has tasted the best of all of them. So, that's an amazing thing, that this is the one that they've regarded as being the most above all the rest, which is pretty phenomenal. So you can just see the desire they had to actually win this. And McCarthy referenced it, they all referenced it. And that sense of hunger, that cannot go, questioned. That is an unbelievable thing, because that's just not a thing you just switch on. You don't just wake up one morning and go, oh, okay, we're going to win the All-Ireland. Let's just go, and we go and do that. That is a massive amount of prep, training, stuff away from the team, sacrifice, all the rest of the stuff to get to that point. And there's a very, very, again, there's small margins in that. I saw James McCarthy this year in a gym I attend, and the fellow was broken up. He was basically on one leg. He was kind of saying to me, oh yeah, I hope the season goes well. And he looked like a fella who was a beaten docket. He looked like an older guy. He was hardly able to walk nearly. He was doing a lot of rehab and prehab. So to see where he went to in kind of February and March, and to see where he is now is phenomenal. And I think they all referenced that, and I think it was borne out in those last few minutes and in small moments in that game.
I think Cluxton doing a lap around the stadium was, more ebullient celebrations than we've ever seen from him. Notwithstanding the fact he wasn't on the telly last night, but it did feel like that was the end for him. And I was hearing that loads of them are thinking about taking, if not a retirement, but certainly time out. Now that could be 4 months, that could be 6 months, that could be a year for a couple of them, and we know several of them have gone travelling before. So I wouldn't be terribly surprised if there's a new manager and a totally new looking team next year.
I wouldn't be, and I don't know if you watched, but McCaffrey, I just caught a little bit of an interview with him and Dessie, and he was mentioning the fact that they were basically handing the baton over, and he was saying that this year was as much about standard setting as anything else, and that's really. He was talking about mentoring and having a teacher-mentor kind of relationship and with players. That's enormous, and I will say one thing about Dublin over the last 10 or 15 years, and this is what a lot of counties have to realise, is that they embrace that. They embrace the former players. They embrace fellas that have been there 10, 15, 20 years ago. They invite them back in. There's no jealousy. There's no kind of saying, oh, that fella was hard to deal with, or this fella was this. They continue to say, well, if these guys have got there for us in the past and they've shown the commitment to wear the jersey for so long, let's bring them in and let's gather up knowledge and use them as a font. And it's amazing. It really is. And I have to say, that for them to even just discuss that, Ger, and mention that and say, we're leaving this Dublin football now in as good a stead as we possibly can be, and we have shown the level of commitments where you need to get to, and these guys are going to take that on and push it on. That's a bit of a warning shot to the rest of the country, to be honest.
Can we talk about Dessie for a moment, because James McCarthy is praising them afterwards, saying it was ridiculous, some of the stuff that was shot at Dessie over the years, and I do think Dessie finally emerges from the shadow of his predecessors here. This All-Ireland, getting all those players back, masterminding the defeat of a Kerry team who were reigning All-Ireland champions, who got their own band back together with Jack O'Connor, and who do have, the greatest footballer of all time in their midst. It's a fairly sensational achievement from Dessie's perspective.
Yeah, for people that, for a guy that people would just say is monotone and, drives the thing down. How far from the truth can you be? I think that he has done a remarkable job. I was chatting to Adrian on the show on Wednesday. We were just referencing the whole thing that he has done since the whole COVID affair. So if you remember that, that could have very easily been the players saying, we want to train. and him saying, look lads, we can't, we're under pressure, and them saying, no, we need to train, let's train in small pods. But he took the flak for all of that, right? The Cluxton thing, no one knows what happened there, whether it was him, whether it was Cluxton, whether it was someone else, but he again took the situation, and he constantly did things to earn the trust of the players. And I don't really feel, Ger, and maybe this is just me from the outside looking in, but to follow in the footsteps of Gavin, right? You've got guys there who've soldiered with him. Gavin has made them legends, right? And they have an umpteen amount of medals. To then follow that in and to go, listen, I can also do that for you, but I can do it in a different way. Because if you remember, and I questioned it, we all questioned the style of football that they were playing maybe in the league at the start of the year and last year, where the likes of John Small or these fellas were coming up from the back and taking shots, and people were saying, that's not the way they did it under Jim Gavin. They wouldn't do that. But Dessie was trying to instill this probably new style of, which he had to. He couldn't go back in and just say, okay, well, what he did, I'm just going to repeat it, because it would have been totally boring. And also the players would have found chinks in it, and they definitely would have said, you know what, this guy has flaws. So what he did was he put his own imprint on it. And you know what, he took all the pressure off them. James McCarthy referenced it yesterday about the flak, and that's stuff that players remember. Players remember the small things. When you're winning, it's fine. But when you're losing and the pressure that comes on at that stage, if you don't have a manager that backs you and you don't have a manager that you can respect and trust, that's the time where managers earn their spurs. And that's the stuff what players remember when it comes to those critical moments in big, big matches. And they say, I'm going to do it for him as well as everything else.
A lot of the focus is obviously going to be on David Clipper's performance from a Kerry side, but when Jack O'Connor and his management team are analysing this over the next few days, what are they going to be looking at that they got wrong, that they could have done better?
It was a messy game, Nathan. People won't really. Croke Park has a weird kind of a surface in the sense of when it rains. A lot of times on a pitch, it kind of you get a bout of rain, and that kind of misty, showery rain, and it kind of soaks it in. Where Croke Park, it literally stays on the top of the surface, and it makes the ball and makes the surface unbelievably slippy. You can't overemphasize that. It's very, very difficult to keep your footing, whether you're twisting or turning or, necessarily bouncing the ball. And the amount of turnovers was unbelievable. If you watch the first 6 or 7 minutes of the second half, you kind of go, geez, this is pretty poor standard, because there was balls out over the end line, there was lads dropping balls, there was hand passes to lads' feet, there was hand passes over fellas' heads, there was all sorts of stuff. Now, you can talk about intensity in the tackle and all of that stuff, and there was plenty of that. But some of the execution was a little bit off. Was that nerves? Was it the intensity of the game? Was it the conditions? I think it was all of that. I think where Kerry faltered was we worried a little bit all year about their midfield. We worried a little bit about their half back line, their half forward line, 10 and 12, and I think inevitably what happened was they just didn't have enough fellas who could put the ball over the bar. Now, I think Gainey really showed up, to be fair to him. And I also think Sean O'Shea blew hot and cold. But outside of that, Paddy was the standout forward for me. Paddy absolutely took the mantle on when needed, and he really drove at Dublin, and he did what he needed to do in that purple patch they got in the second half. But, inevitably he kind of tired, and then they didn't have anyone, they didn't have the bench to come on. I know Spillane came on and kicked an absolutely brilliant score right away, but apart from that, they didn't really have anyone a la Jack McCaffrey who could cause absolute mayhem when they got the ball. I thought their defence was excellent. I thought Foley was unbelievable. Tom O'Sullivan and Costello had an unbelievable battle, basically just chasing each other up and down the pitch, nullifying each other, because Tom O'Sullivan's usually good for 2 scores. Costello's obviously a marquee forward who was held, I don't know if he was held scoreless, he got a few frees, but he didn't have a great game. And I just thought, I thought that was probably where they did it. They got all their kickouts away because Dublin were obviously dropping back. But if you were looking at it from a really analytical point of view, I think the problem was with them. They were a little bit open. Dublin did well in the sense of they put a man up and they pushed up on Morley and they made Morley mark. And that was a positive. And then once Dublin ran at them down the middle and came at them with pace, real pace, and fellas off the shoulder, that caused issues for them. But I think ultimately when they sit back and they analyse the year, they say, well, if the greatest player who has ever played the game is slightly off, have we got enough around it to really pick it up? And inevitably the answer was no.
Yeah, I think there's midfield reinforcements coming next season as well, so there is something for them to cling on to in terms of what will happen next year, that there could be enough of a change. Having said that, you would still expect the half-backs and the half-forwards to be largely the same, unless maybe the Spillans end up starting and reaching a point where they're consistent enough. So it's going to be bleak enough from Kerry's perspective, in that they will feel that this is one that they were the main reason they lost.
I think they will, Ger. It is a hard one for them. They're going to have to sit down. I think the easy thing will be, and the easy excuse and the easy narrative will be, David had an off day. And because he'd an off day, if he had the shooting boots on, sure Jesus, we would have won by 5 or 6. I don't think that's not really 100% accurate, because if you watch a lot of the times, now I counted probably 2. Do you remember the one where he kind of sliced inside and he did a beautiful little slalom through Dublin players on his right foot and he kicked it wide in the left? That was an easy score. He should have kicked that, right? There was another one then where he came in from the left-hand side and he clipped it wide. That was another. As I said, he probably had another 3 to 4 where you'd say, yeah, he should get those. So that brings him up to 7 or 8. And as I said, that's an okay return for him, right? If he's getting 109, 110, but that's the kind of expectations we have for him, which is unbelievable.
Yeah.
But that is how good he is. So I think they also need to go back a little bit and they need to say, right, as you said, where are we from that midfield point of view? Where are we from our half forwards, our 10 and 12? Have we enough that, I thought Stephen O'Brien would have been much more effective coming onto the pitch. I thought he had an off day. He ran into trouble a lot. He didn't really affect the game. When you come to All-Ireland final day, you need to be playing at 8, 9, 10 out of 10. That's where your levels have to be to really go and do it. And if you're having a 5 or a 6 out of 10 and you're getting on the ball, but you're not really doing a whole pile with it, and you're not really massively, as I say, affecting the game and causing threats, and I thought a number of that Kerry forward line were in that camp, and indeed their half back line. So they've got a little bit of work to do. But I'm sure that they'll unearth some players down there, and they'll come again. Look, the spine is unbelievably strong, and I think they will look back again and say, yes, we had opportunities. But on the flip side, the goal they got was a great goal. It come at a really brilliant time for them. But I think they could have been 2 or 3 more behind at that stage. Con had an easy mark, which he should have just taken and tipped it over the bar, and it would have been 7-3.
Somebody definitely in the build-up have been like, they'll have been having a word with him because he took a mark in the semi-final, where the sense was he should have taken his man on. He does take his man on. It's like it skews the ball wide. So Con didn't look like Con all year, even though he was supposed to be the difference between the team this year and last year. It was he didn't quite hit the standards, did he?
No, I don't think he probably did.
That we expect of him, I mean.
Yeah, obviously I expected him. I think he probably suffered a little bit of an identity situation, in the sense of I love the fact that when he wins a mark, he just thinks of, okay, I'm taking you on, right? That is the way it should be. But again, I think a little bit like Clifford, right? Sometimes you have to do less, kind of to let others be more, right? And I think even in that situation where he cracks it off the crossbar, if you look, Pascal is making a run off his left-hand side. And if he slips him the hand pass, because at that stage Foley was done, he had got inside him, he'd probably taken a few extra steps, but if he had slipped him a hand pass There was two of them coming in. There was a defender goal, but I think they would have got an easier goal. The one at the first half where he marks it, just get yourself into the game. Get an easy score. He kind of seems to be a fella who, again, is feeling that pressure and is trying too much to kind of do things. But look, he worked. Look, you know what? People will go on and they'll give out, and we're trying to analyse the game. Like the level of intensity, the fitness levels, the tackling, the ferocity, all of that, and the skill levels at for large parts of the time in a very, very difficult conditions was brilliant yesterday. It really, really was. Some of the scores that were taken. And I'm delighted for Pascal. I think he has had an awful lot of critics. I was questioning him at the start of the year because I just felt that he wasn't doing what he did yesterday. He was dishing the ball off a lot, and he wasn't really. And like he for me was instrumental in that second half period for Dublin in turning the game around. Him and McCaffrey. And by the way, if you want to go back to what you need from impact players and what you need from your half backs and your half forwards, you need what McCaffrey did. If you just watch him every single time, he just eyed his man up and said, "Right, I'm going by you." There was none of this going lateral. There was none of this going back to a man. It was just, here we go. Yeah. I'm taking you the inside or the outside, and we're going to see what happens. But I thought he was really, really good yesterday.
All right. Was he good stuff? Thanks a million.
No bother, lads.
It's who's your footballer of the year? Sorry, before we let you go.
Oh, yeah. Nice, easy one there, Ger. Thanks. Yeah. Jesus. Oh. You have me. I don't know. Like McCarthy, obviously, it's McCarthy won it.
He was the RTE one, and he's massive odds on now to win it. It's a lifetime.
I don't know.
It's a lifetime achievement award. He should have got it before, but anyway.
Yeah, I would absolutely. Yeah, I think. Can we hold that one? Come back.
Yeah, okay. We'll do that.
Yeah, Fenton is definitely in the running. Fenton is Cluxton has to be in the running.
Cluxton, yeah, I think so too.
But I'm talking enough about Cluxton. Like in those conditions yesterday, not to lose a kick out. Maybe Cluxton and Brian Howard, because again, like Howard going back and those short little balls where one mistake, Kerry are in and they pounce, and they never made the mistake once.
Yeah.
No, and you're right, by the way, and I have it. Sorry, I know you lads want to move on, but the Cluxton was, because what happens is, Nathan, you see a score going over, right? And then they get the kick out of the way and you say, that was pretty easy. But actually the pressure that is being applied at that time, because if you don't get that kick out of the way, now one score becomes two, and all of a sudden, Kerry are totally up. They never, ever got a chance to build again after they got a score. And that was down to Cluxton and the movement outside.
Potentially the most important Gaelic footballer ever. Like that's the type of nonsense that we have to talk when we were talking about Cluxton, because there's no other way to frame the impact that he's had in the game, and the fact he's coming back at 42. Like he's slowly ambling up to take the free, completely sucking the life out of the entire, and then just nailing it. You're like, wow, this is ridiculous.
First score of the day, Ger.
Yeah,
just walks up on the right for a right-footed kicker and just goes, yeah, no problem, bang, straight over. And even the one, do you remember the one Clifford skies up in the air?
Yeah.
And it's hanging. And some fellas would go and attack that high, right? And he just waits, just boom, thanks. And the Kerry forward comes in literally a second later, and he just has the time, and he just, as calm as you like, just comes out with it. Like, look at the amount of shots really on goal as well. Like, I know Kerry got the goal, and then they had the one that was cleared off the line. I thought Dublin probably had a few more chances. I don't know if you remember the one where Kilkenny was going through and he hand passes a ball to Pascal high. They end up getting a score from it from Mannion. But if he gives that on the chest, they're running right through on goal. There was probably 2 or 3 chances for Dublin.
Yeah.
But look, Cluxton has been, without doubt. But I think Dublin are served well there. I think they're okay. I think Evan Comerford and Hannah... It's not like there's going to be a major deficiency, but of course there will be, because, as you say, he is probably the most important player of the last 15 years in Gaelic football.
Yeah. All right, Moyles, good stuff.
No bother. Cheers, lads.
It's 8:33. Aisling O'Reilly's with us now, live from the Dublin Team Hotel. Aisling, good morning to you.
Good morning, lads. How's things?
Where are you, actually? Where is the Dublin Team Hotel today?
It's in Santry, the Crown Plaza in Santry. So I'm hidden in a corner here as a few of the players are on their way in for breakfast. So we have movement.
Very good. This is a bit better than the Limerick lads.
Who've you seen, Aisling?
So far it was Dessie that was up first. He's gone in for breakfast with his wife, and then Brian Howard as well. And I overheard him saying that he's been up, I think he was up until about 5:30 last night. So he's doing pretty well to be up at this time. Fair play to him.
If you get Stephen Cluxton this morning, Aisling.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can retire.
This is your Pulitzer.
No pressure. Thanks, Aidan. Yeah, I'll go up and find out what room he is, knock on the door. But what he done yesterday was just incredible, wasn't it? It felt like a reeling in the years moment. Like I said it to Dessie afterwards, like it was all a bit surreal to see him stepping up to that first 45 after 4 minutes and just putting it over the bar. I just looked at Paddy Andrews beside me, and the both of us just looked at each other, and he just started laughing like, this is wild that he is still doing this at this age.
Yeah.
It was one of the things I did notice sitting right behind Jack O'Connor and Mike Quirk. They were going mad for Cluxton's 2 scores with the officials. Look it up! Look, he's just strolling up! Like, yeah, he is. He's literally going to do this at his own pace.
And Dessie said that as well in the press conference. He said, it takes him a bit longer now to get up to the ball, and it takes him a good while to get back.
The Zimmer frame, was that the implication? And so I presume it's just an overwhelming sense of joy and relief. There's definitely, Ash, a sense that this is last dance for a lot of these, that the retirement's going to start seeping out over the next few days.
Yeah, I think so. Like, nobody gave anything away yesterday. Obviously, we spoke to James McCarthy in the press conference afterwards, and he was asked, was this the band getting back together, and is this the band breaking up again? And he said, well, it's not a bad way to go out. He sort of paused and then said that, and then he just said, look, I'm not making any decisions yet. I'm going to enjoy this. And it was the same for Dean Rock as well when I spoke to him. So you do get the sense that this is probably it for a lot of them. But what a way to go out. I think this one meant more than maybe the rest. You could see the elation. And even Dean Rock said, when you're winning maybe 5 in a row, like it gets maybe the norm. So he said this one just meant that bit more. So yeah, it was unbelievable to see the scenes afterwards. Even at the bus, you're sort of waiting around hoping to get an interview with someone, and they were all still in their jerseys, in their shorts, with pints in their hands, just very loose, like something I haven't seen from the Dublin players, that's for sure. But they're really enjoying it all. So yeah, it definitely means a lot to them.
All right, Ash, hopefully they finish their breakfast soon. We'll get to talk to some of them before we go off air in about an hour or so. But in the meantime, thanks very much.
Thanks, lads.
Aisling O'Reilly from the Crown Plaza in Santry this morning.
I think Anthony Moyles made a great point on Dessie Farrell. Like, we don't see inside these camps. We don't know what players are looking for from a manager. What we want is a Dessie Farrell who is the life and soul of the party, who comes out and entertains us in his press conferences and gives us something every single week. And that's not him. But he obviously has his players back. And I think back to talking to Shane Carthy, the former Dublin footballer, who has spoken so eloquently and honestly about his battle with depression, and the way he talks about Dessie Farrell in his book and Farrell's influence, and being able to go and talk to Dessie Farrell when he was at his lowest point, that he was the one he opened up to. And Dessie Farrell obviously has a background as a psychiatric nurse, has had his own mental health issues as well that he's been quite open about, but that Dessie Farrell was someone he knew would have his back at his toughest moment. And you got that sense from the Dublin players. The way they spoke about him last night was, well, actually, you know what, we were able to look at Dessie and you mightn't get what you want from him, but we get exactly what we want. We get the best coaching team around. We've got everything we ever need. So he's maintained that from Jim Gavin of, pulling all the right things in at the right time. But actually, he's got our back when we need him. And as a Dublin footballer, probably more than anywhere in the county, maybe Dublin and Kerry together, you need that from your manager.
Yeah. It is an incredible achievement for them to inspire the ones who were too tired to go again. Like, that's his greatest achievement, So I don't know what's going to happen.
How does that even happen? I get this. All the story is it was at James McCarthy's wedding. The conversation, but even still, like Cluxton, as you say, is into his 40s. How do you get him to come back?
It doesn't make any sense.
Who's texting you there, Ger?
No, it doesn't make. I'm sorry, I'm trying to read the story of the wedding. Like, who was it at the wedding that said, "Are you going back? Yeah, I'll go if you go." Like, who's the ringleader? Was it like a job? Was it, James, look, I know your wedding day is very important, but look, there's going to be a good opportunity for you to put a bit of an emotional squeeze on the lads. Like maybe 3 points in.
Something in the speech, maybe. In the speech, mention them. You'd love to have him back. Might really just pulling the heartstrings a little bit?
Yeah, well, it seems to have worked. 8:38 this morning. Let's go to Australia, live to Brisbane. Kathleen McNamee, good morning to you. How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
What's your level of anticipation for the game?
I have to admit, like, in the last few days it wasn't all that big, and then just being around Brisbane today, it kind of went up a little bit again. The fans around here have been great. I'm outside one of the Irish bars at the moment in Brisbane, and actually you missed it. If you come to about 10 minutes ago, it was absolutely hopping, and then this massive like crowd of people just started walking down towards the stadium. Supposedly there's a really good atmosphere down there as well. So yeah, I think everyone is just relaxing into the atmosphere of today, enjoying it, knowing it's their last one, and not going in with a massive amount of anticipation for what they want on the pitch, more just soaking in the good vibes while we're still here.
Have you had any sense yet about what the team is going to be and what Vera's approach to this game will be?
So Vera was quite clear yesterday when she was talking about it in her press conference that like she's going out to win this game. She's not coming out to, she was like, I know it's a big deal for the players and I know you want them to have a good time, but also I want to win this game. So that's the sort of team she's going to put out. To that end, I can't imagine there's going to be too many changes. The official word from the FAI still at the moment is that Heather Payne should be available for selection. However, she didn't compete in full training yesterday. Now, Louise also didn't compete in full training before the Canada game and still played. So she's to be confirmed. I saw a few people suggesting there might be a bit of a switch up in the back with Diane Caldwell coming in there, and then that'll allow Megan Conley to move up into the midfield a bit more and let Denise O'Sullivan go, which I actually think could be an interesting one because I don't really think we've seen the best of Denise out of all this tournament. I think, normally after most games, she would be one of the number one names that you're talking about, and that hasn't really been the case as much. There's also been some thought that she might still be carrying a bit of a knock, so maybe that is wild. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, does Vera listen to all the calls from home to give a few people a bit of a run out tonight? Somehow I think not, but we shall see.
Kathleen, all of the build-up has been dominated about Vera Pauw's future, and I'm just interested your sense from being at the press conference, and it felt very PR speak from all of the players who've spoken over the weekend. They all had pretty much the same stock answer of, it's the World Cup, we're concentrating on the next game, we've achieved an awful lot over the next few years. But much like Katie McCabe in that pre-France press conference, did not give their manager their full backing in a very unusual way for a footballer when their manager has generally been sat beside them. Is that your sense, that actually the feeling around the camp is that this is coming to an almost natural end now?
I think so, and I've said it even before, like yesterday's press conference, which was incredibly awkward to sit through, and like it just feels like nearly every press conference we've had in the lead up to this World Cup or during it has had some issue kind of hanging over it or something incredibly awkward. As you say, none of the players have really like massively backed Vera. They've said, like Megan Conley yesterday kind of was probably one of the players that went a little bit further. She's like, it's obviously not for me to decide, but Vera has been very good for me and we've achieved some great things over the last couple of years. I mean, I've been feeling this on the ground pretty much since maybe the last 2 weeks, week and a half anyways, that it just felt like there had been like a disconnect between the team and Vera, and it felt like, there was still no more talk about whether there was going to be more contract negotiations. Jonathan Hill had said to the Irish media that he would talk to us whenever we were out here about Vera's contract, and now that's not going to happen before the delegation fly back tomorrow. So it seems like everyone is trying to avoid answering the questions. I was kind of surprised that Vera chose to use her last press conference to say, yes, I do think we have all been treated unfairly. I don't know how well that is going to go down if there are negotiations still to happen, but it does kind of feel like that was maybe one of her last opportunities to speak out, and she took it for what she needed. Yeah, I think that's a clear sign that whatever negotiations there were going to be are largely done. It feels like it's very difficult to come back from that.
She's made a massive miscalculation by talking to the journalists from The Athletic, whether she approached them or whether it was through this survey. But the timing of that article has undermined her completely, it seems, in the eyes of her players, and also has probably changed the conversation around the FAI, who backed themselves into a corner by backing her so quickly. The results, I know they're on a losing streak, but again, some of the best teams in the world, but football wise I think it's very hard to make a case that she shouldn't stay on based on the performances. But I think it does feel as though she lost the dressing room with what happened with that Athletic article, and there's probably no coming back from that.
Yeah, I definitely think that's right. You know, ever since then, like Katie's final words in that last press conference we had in Tala before we came out was thanks for asking about the World Cup, guys. And obviously, like us as journalists, you want to talk about the football and you want to talk about the World Cup and all that sort of stuff, but there was nothing else to talk about on that day because it was such a big story. And I can imagine that was incredibly frustrating for the players who just wanted to, you know, soak up the moment, talk about this. Ever since we've been over here, every press conference you go into, you've kind of been waiting for the international media to ask about it. Surprisingly, none of them have, which was really surprising to me. I thought they would have been interested in it. And then you come to the final press conference, final game, and you have to talk about Vera's contract situation. You know, it's just, and the fact that none of the players have come out and vehemently said, yes, we really want her to stay, or like put some impetus on the FAI to get this sorted, kind of says a lot, I think. And I haven't had the impression all the way through that even after the games, when they're talking about the match or you're chatting to them a couple of days later, everyone's talking about individual players or like the team spirit, but no one ever picks out Vera and compliments her. And I think that says a lot. There's been an avoidance of talking about her, which there hasn't been in previous times. So yeah, like I say, I think this could be a natural conclusion.
Give me your prediction, Kathleen.
3-2 to Ireland.
Send her home. Send her. It's time to come home, Kathleen. It's time to come home.
No, I think it'll be 2-0 Nigeria, to be honest. That's probably my actual one. Yeah, let's go with that.
All right. Happy times, Kathleen. Enjoy the game. Thanks a million.
Can you guys tell I haven't really slacked in 3 weeks? Thanks, guys.
See you later. Good luck. Kathleen, not predicting a win for Ireland at the moment. It's a difficult situation. Last group game, we've nothing to play for. They have everything to play for.
Yeah, they definitely need this game now to really secure. But, you know, I think if we apply ourselves, if we play a different type of game, because the game that the Nigerians are playing are a high game, and they have two fantastic midfielders that one always holds. But I think we have a chance. I mean, we've really done well. We've equipped ourselves very well in terms of, you look at teams who are beaten really badly. We've been marginalised in our score, and a couple of those goals were our own making.
Yeah. Like, a lot of the analysis of the World Cup is that this has been a failure, right? And I see that. You lose 2 games the World Cup, it's hard to paint it any other way. But we have been against teams who are significantly better than us, much further down the line than us in terms of their evolution, development, experience of major tournaments. And we actually played better football in those games than we have done in qualifying for the tournament. In many ways. Well, that's what happens when you play in a tournament like this. Like you draw on things that you probably wouldn't have used in other games. You have the huge support that lifts you as well, and then you lift your own game personally. We've had a few injuries. We're missing a couple of players. Again, today I'm not quite sure if Vera's going to stick to the plan. Again, that would be dependent on whether she has injuries. You know, players are putting their hand up to say that they're injured. At the same time, it'd be great to see that you could get maybe 100%, half a game out of somebody, so that we can get 100% right through the game. But we need to go at them. If we win the game, it's a great end to the competition. If we get something out of it, it'll be something to cling to. But if we lose the game, does it matter at this stage? Well, I think the men's Euro in the 90s, I think the first one we went to, the guys lost the first 3 games and they were out, you know, so... The Euro 88 was the first one. Yeah. We beat England in the first game, drew with Russia, and then lost the Dutch game at the end. But we obviously were beaten in all 3 games in 2012 when Trapattoni was the manager. Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of. Yeah.
This is different though, because pre-tournament I think people with the controversy around Vera Pauw felt it might be a Euro 2012, and I think the conversation there was with Trapattoni. You talked to the players afterwards, they felt it was sort of done a year before. They were sort of done with Trapattoni. Like, this team have gone out and actually, I think, really performed. The performance against Canada, you know, it was probably reminiscent of the first 45 minutes against France, where they were brilliant. Like Kira Carusa, like an absolute nightmare to play against. That, if anything, the game plan that they're trying to implement is getting better.
Yeah, but then from my perspective, it's got to do with fitness, that we can last a full game at pace, because And again, our formation going out. Caruso is brilliant, but she's no good up there on her own. You know, and that's that. And if you look at all the setup for the other teams coming out, they're pushing 3 up front. Well, that's what the plan is, to put 3 up front, whether they drop back and other people move forward. But the idea is to go out with that mindset and the fact that you stay close and compact as you move up the field. You'll have the stars that will shine, like Katie McCabe, maybe Denise O'Sullivan, maybe Abby Larkin, you know, Louise Quinn. You know, you'll have those type of players that will shine. But today is the day to do it. It's all or nothing today.
Yeah. And it'll be a lot to cling on to as they roll forward if we were to get something from the game today.
Yeah, it will be. And also, maybe now that they've had this experience, they're now going to have to go back and look at the teams they played against and look across all the others and see what are we missing that they have, and where can we find the players that can do that, because we're looking for players that are, you know, just natural, that when they're in front of the goal, you just take your chances. Don't passing the ball here, there and everywhere, walking the ball into the goal or shooting from too far out. Have confidence, you know, because we have skillful players, but we need to allow them to express themselves.
I think everybody's just disappointed because we didn't get the bandwagon up and running and the opportunity to play England in the last 16. If we'd got out of the group, it would all have been pretty special. It would like a big breakout moment.
It would have been fantastic. I mean, we are in a very, very tough group. We really, really were. But yeah, to get out and play against England, because I felt that in the Euros when I was looking at it, that we would have had a really good go at some of those teams, you know. And if you think of England, the first match they were diabolical, but the second match they were clinical.
Yeah. Qualify for the Euros is now obviously the single most important thing, right? There's a strong feeling that this is going to be the end of the Vera Pauw. This is going to be the end of the Vera Pauw era. Sometimes you just need to be careful with that stuff. Like a new manager comes in and has to hit the ground immediately.
Yeah, you see, that's the danger. So you can't experiment with such a short period coming up to the Euros. You know, what do you do? But who do you get? And then the players have to know what style that particular manager wants you to play, whether they want to allow you to express yourself or want to contain you in an area, but you express yourself in that area, you know, or whether they want to play players in their proper positions.
Yeah, that is the difficulty, because Vera Pauw is so strong in how she wants Ireland to play, for good and for bad, because I'm interested in what you talk about supporting Kira Carusa there. Like, one of the great things about this World Cup is that the minnows, if we call them that, have been so good to watch. On the counter-attack, they've sucked up pressure, but actually there's a load of technical ability there. When they get on the ball, they go forward quickly, whereas too often still with Ireland it feels that it goes forward to Carusa, and unless Katie McCabe makes the run up, there's nobody really there in support. Even when Sinead Farrelly did well, it sort of slows down a little bit. If you're looking at today's game, what can she do tactically to help Carusa? Do you play, like there's talk that maybe Megan Connolly goes into midfield, Denise O'Sullivan plays in one of those more advanced roles. Does that change it?
Yeah, it would, because it's natural for Denise to go forward and we need people to go forward. But I think often we're very stretched in our play. You know, our defence is stretched away from the midfield. The midfield is miles away from the forwards. That if we can push up, it'll actually save you a bit of leg if you move in relation to the ball, if you know what I mean. And we're inclined to ball watch and see what's going to happen, and let's protect here and let's protect here. If you look at the Nigeria, they rotate the two midfield players, so when one goes and supports, the other one sort of holds back, but she doesn't hold back in the defensive, she holds back in a V, so that then when the ball breaks, she makes the run, so the other midfielder gets a break, if you know what I mean. But you have to have an engine on you to be able to do that type of, you know, work on the pitch. And a lot of the teams seem to have that. A lot of the successful teams seem to have that. But that's an individual thing that you can work on yourself.
What do you think is going to happen today?
I hope I'm going to be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
I really do. I hope Vera puts on. I mean, our options are very tight now, depending on whether there's injuries. I hope she puts on a couple of players forward, you know, and allow particularly Katie McCabe, not to be drawn back so far, and let her come up and support, because she has the legs that were missing in quite a few places. On the other side, I think if Payne is out and she has to play Anya Gorman, Anya is a little bit lost for pace. So if I was playing with Anya and I knew Anya was playing and I was a central defender, one at centre, I would be going out to make it a 2-on-1, do or die. The idea is if the ball doesn't come in, you can't do any damage. So the idea is to prevent the ball coming in.
Vera has come in for criticism for pointing out that there's a lack of pace in our squad, and that's why she plays with the 3 centre backs. Are we all being a little bit precious, or is the manager not supposed to say that stuff?
Well, I wouldn't be saying that stuff, number one, because that's giving ammunition to the opposition. When the cross came in for the second goal, we didn't need any pace. We just needed to be able to track the ball and move in relation to the ball and adjust ourselves. And
are you, as the manager, not supposed to say that? Or are you, as the manager, supposed to say, well, look, because I think she was criticised for also saying that too.
I wouldn't be saying anything to give any other team any type of ammunition to use against me. I would not be talking about my players. That'd be something I'd be trying to work out myself. In terms of, okay, if I have somebody who isn't so fast, I need somebody beside her that's going to be able to support her. But I wouldn't be saying anything derogative about my players at all.
All right, fair enough.
I wouldn't even do it for my club team.
All right, give us your prediction.
I hope that, I think we might do pretty well if the players are rotated and not left on till they're tired. They're absolutely tired. We've been very close in goals, really close, and the girls have to be admired for that. If we can contain the 2 central midfielders,
okay,
I think that we might have a chance
of getting a draw or a win.
Well, see, I think we might have a chance of getting a win.
All right.
Now the only thing that will go against us, I think, is our pace and our lack of pace. I don't think the Nigerians are what we call dirty players. They're very powerful and physical, and they stand their ground. Great balance, lovely little technical skills. They're willing to run to win the ball, and they do an awful lot of interchanging. If you look at the front 3, I mean, they're moving in and out. The player that was on the right is now on the left, but the player on the left has actually moved to right. So the awareness of where their positional sense is in relation to everybody on the team, I found quite remarkable.
Okay, so a big challenge for us today. Linda, good stuff. Enjoy the game. Thanks a million.
Thanks a lot, lads.
It's 8:56. A reminder, Braeburn Coffee, the official coffee partner of Off the Ball. Braeburn Coffee coming to an Applegreen store near you. New Braeburn locations are popping up every month. Visit applegreenstores.com/Braeburn to find your nearest Braeburn coffee experience. Let's go back to Gaelic football. Paul Caffrey is with us this morning. Paul, good morning to you. How are you?
Sore head, Ger, but very happy man.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk in the papers that this is their favourite one of all of their 9 children. Many of the Dubs are saying this is their favourite, and I can see why. Because there was a sense that this was a Kerry team that was coming with a young force, and you kind of need to stop them in their tracks now. And so, how do you rank it?
Yeah, look, in the ground there was a lot of emotion. I think, the Pat Gilroy's first one, 2011, was very special. The Cluxon laid free. It was a moment. It was a long time since 95, so that gap was bridged. And then, look, Jim had this fantastic run where I suppose just Dublin people couldn't believe what was happening year after year, producing big performances and the great battles with Mayo in particular over that period. And look, the hurt of the last 2 years in terms of losing semi-finals and, after such a great run.
Paul, I'm just gonna hold you there, because actually we can cross live to the team hotel, and I think we're good to talk to Dessie Farrell this morning. Dessie, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, Ger Nathan. How are you?
Congrats.
What was your night like?
The night was lovely. Yeah, it was great. couldn't wait to get to my bed either at the same time. It was one of those types of days, but no, it was lovely to spend time with family and friends and share a special period after a day like we had.
What was your experience of the match like? Because it was bloody tense for us as neutrals. I can only imagine how tense it was for you. What was the ebb and flow in your sense of it?
Yeah, it was. I think it probably went according to script. We knew it was going to be nip and tuck all the way. I'd hate to actually watch it as a spectator myself, because I can imagine what that was like, but when you're on the sideline and you're sort of trying to be on task and you're engaged, the brain is engaged and active in all sorts of different things, so the tension piece of it doesn't really, you're still trying to figure out the puzzle and come up with different solutions to different challenges as you see them in front of you. So it's but it was just over and back, and I think ultimately we had that sense of belief that we'd get there at the end, and it materialised that way, thankfully.
When the Gainey goal goes in just before half time, a lesser team, a less experienced team, a team maybe who wasn't prepared for something like that, might find that to be a bit of a shock to the system, because you played quite well and contained them in that first half. So what's the conversation at half time like?
Yeah, the conversation at half time was positive. It's strange. So sometimes you might go in at half time in a lead or a comfortable lead, and it's a different type of conversation because you're not so happy with how the performance has been in the first 35 minutes. But actually at half time yesterday, we were happy with how we were playing defensively. Obviously, they have some huge threats up front, and even some of the defenders, their backs are very comfortable going forward. So there was a big emphasis on team defence and containing them. And we thought, although it was a sucker punch just before the half-time whistle to concede that goal, we thought defensively we'd done very well. I'm very happy with that, and just make some adjustments up front into our attacking game was what was required at half-time. And but we were happy with where we were at.
It's a good sign when there's such a debate about the man of the match that there was probably 4 or 5 different Dublin contenders who put their hands up. Mick Fitzsimon's very unlucky not to get it. I think everybody felt going in that Clifford gets 6 points regardless of what happens, and he ends up with 3. Can you talk about how you planned to contain him, both with Mick Fitzsimon's marking him but also as a defensive unit?
Yeah, it wasn't rocket science. We could get a sense from Mick Fitz maybe 10 days out that he was keen to take on that mammoth challenge in Mahark and David Clifford, and to Mick's eternal credit, like the homework and the preparation and the in-depth analysis he done on all his opponents, but particularly for this one, is something to behold. And then there was a big emphasis on team defence, that it wasn't just going to be Mick's responsibility, it was everyone's responsibility to marshal a player like David, and the problem with that is it can open up the floodgates elsewhere. So we had to be fairly strategic in how we managed that it was Mick Fitz plus one other, not 2 or 3 others, and leave other Kerry forwards free and in space, and it was just being as compact as we possibly could. It worked very well in the first half for us. They had a period of dominance then in the second half where we seemed to be a little bit more open at the back, but I think we got on top of that again and kicked on from there.
And in the second half then, what was your sense of how that went? So obviously there was that period where Kerry were getting on top, and then in the final 10 minutes a couple of your big players start to find pockets of space or carry the ball for 60-70 yards and really just drive it at the heart of that Kerry defence. What was your sense of how the game was unfolding, particularly in those last 15 minutes?
Yeah, we sort of anticipated that it might open up a little bit more in the second half because, Kerry are renowned for obviously having some serious attacking threats. They're very good defensively themselves, have good structure, some really good one-on-one defenders. So we knew space and time was going to be at a premium, particularly in the first half, but that there may be opportunities that might start to open up a little bit in the second half. And, some of our fellas got that little bit of space. To big turnover as well, which helped. Collie Basquel did brilliantly in terms of turning over a Kerry defender, which set up the goal for Paddy Small. And we spoke about it in advance that this game was going to turn on the big moments, and try to win as many of those moments as you possibly could, particularly going down the stretch.
How enjoyable has it been to manage this group over the last 12 months in particular, as the old stagers returned, but as some of those new younger players also managed to begin to put their hand up for selection?
Yeah, it's really enjoyable. It's a great season. It's it's well renowned and well spoken about, the older guys and the senior guys, and the types of individuals they are. Some special people, and then we had a lot of young players come in over the last 2 years. I think something like 22 in total in the last 2 seasons, and we just got a great blend going. The younger guys full of enthusiasm, energy, eager to learn. There were some really good student-mentor relationships developing within the group, and I think a lot of the younger guys, they really spark life into some of the senior guys as well. And having a bit of fun and a bit of crack is important along the way. But a lovely little bond seemed to emerge, and that type of a dynamic within the group. And then the other part of it is timing, of course. Different season, different format, competition structure. Not an exact science. You got to trust your gut with a lot of these things in terms of when to push and when to hold back, and ultimately to be able to peak at the right time, which thankfully seemed to happen for us yesterday.
We've been doing a deep analysis on James McCarthy's wedding and what must have developed that night. Like, was it during James McCarthy's speech? Did he give a shout out to Stephen Cluxton and say, "You're my one true love"? Actually, please come back. How did that actually happen?
There's a lot of speculation around how those conversations materialised. Some of them may have happened at the wedding, some of them may have taken place before that as well. So, but look at it, they're great lads. They've great relationships themselves, and there's that special bond from, as you can imagine, from fellas who have soldiered as long as they have together. So it was great to see some of those more experienced lads who'd been away for some time come back. But it was always a case of the door was always open, and it was just whenever they were ready. And if that day came, we were delighted to have them back.
You also deserve a lot of credit for bringing Pat Gilroy on board. How did that all come about? Pat
and myself obviously played together over the years, and we have a great friendship and great relationship. Even when Pat won in 2011, I was with the senior team. I was the minor manager at that stage, and Pat was always a great assistant. And even though he was busy with a big job himself, he was always keeping an eye out for how we were getting on with the minor team. And the same with sort of under 21 teams over the years. He was always a great sounding board, and a fella to have a cup of coffee with, or pick his brains on certain things, and that would have been the case over the last couple of seasons. And then at some stage this season I said, sure, why don't you give us a little bit more of a dig out, and he started coming out to some of the sessions and being around the great place, and he's been brilliant, his experience and just the type of man he is. It was great to have his input and support all season.
Can I just ask about those quieter moments you had last night with your family and friends? Because it's a tough gig being the Dublin manager. You win a game in Leinster, you don't win it by 10 points, you get stick. You draw at Roscommon earlier in the championship, you're getting stick for that. It's sort of relentless, the level of expectation that is there. There seemed to be a sense watching you on TV last night of just relief. Can you talk about actually getting that time to yourself and actually being able to sit down and maybe have that first moment of contemplation of what you've achieved?
Yeah, it's and it is just the first moments, because there's a lot going on at last night's event, and I think it's probably over the next couple of days that we'll get actually some quieter time and quieter moments to be together as a group ourselves, and I'm looking forward to those moments and those conversations. They're a great crew, as I've mentioned. special affection for them. The service that some of the senior lads have given to Dublin football over the years is it's unquantifiable. And then, I've been very privileged to have worked with some of these men when they were kids, and I've seen them grown from young boys to young men over the course of the last 10-12 years, and a very privileged position to be in. So it's I'm delighted for them. They're a great crew, and they deserve that yesterday.
Have you thought about what's next for you yet?
No, I haven't. I have a cup of coffee here beside me, and that's definitely the next thing. No, look, we'll. There's some of the players obviously are going to be in that position as well, where they need to make some decisions, and yesterday, today, or tomorrow isn't the time for that. I think everyone will take time to reflect on what's next for them, and we'll see how that all unfolds in due course.
Yeah, well, I think everybody will give you whatever space you need to make whatever decision you want to make, because that's the benefit of having this little bit of breathing space and moment for reflection. This is obviously very different from winning your first time with the group. This is like the full board. It'll be a homecoming. You'll be able to go out and meet people and fully enjoy it. It's like a very different experience, I suspect, from the first one that you won as manager.
Yeah, definitely. The first one we won back in 2020. The post-match celebrations were quite muted, as you can imagine. We went back to Parnell Park, and it was just players and backroom team only, no partners, no families, and that was lovely and special in its own way. But yesterday was very different, and it was a delight to have family and friends around and to be able to share that special time.
How does it compare with winning as a player?
It's very, very different. As a player, you're just solely focused on yourself and getting yourself right. As a manager, there's much more responsibility, and it's actually, there's nothing like playing, Ger, as you can imagine. But it's definitely a privileged position to be in, to work with players like this, and just delighted for them all.
Well, listen, enjoy your coffee, and whatever comes next, Dessie, congratulations. Cheers.
Thanks, lads. Thanks a million. All the best.
So Dessie Farrell giving us some thoughts there. Paul, it is a stunning achievement from Dessie's perspective to face down the criticism that he faced in the last couple of years, to get the band back together, to convince them that it was the right thing to do, and then to reintegrate them into the team in a seamless manner, because it can't be easy to bring those lads back and to manage that whole thing properly.
Yeah, look, I think Dessie comes out of this with fantastic credit. He explains it away in a very gentle manner there in relation to Pat Gilroy coming back on board. But like Dessie would have assessed them, like they were so close in the last 2 years to getting over them semi-finals, but yet they didn't. And looking at some of the guys who maybe started last year, sort of the next wave of players that was coming through. Lorcan O'Dell started against Kerry last year. Tom Lahiff played. A lot of them guys didn't get game time in the crunch moments this year, and Dessie probably looked and said, we are just a bit short. And then whatever conversation took place to get the three lads back.
Well, let me hold you there again, sorry Paul, because we'll get to that. We've actually got Brian Howard with us now as well. Brian, good morning to you. How's the head?
Oh, fresh as the daisy.
Are you? Yeah.
To go again.
How sweet was this one?
There was something a little different to this one. Just that bit sweeter than the other past few years. But I know every All Ireland is obviously amazing, but you always treasure the most recent one, and especially when you've missed it for 2 years, and you sort of, as I mentioned, you don't sort of realise what you got till it's gone sort of mentality. So I know it was amazing getting back up those steps. It was a special day.
When, as the year unfolded, did you begin to think, actually, hang on a second, with everybody who's come back and with the younger players starting to put pressure to make sure that everybody's at it, that you were at the same level that you've been at in previous years?
Yeah, and it was a strange one enough for me this year in terms of I probably missed a lot of the pre-season, doing a bit of travelling, but I came back in a bit in December, but mostly in February I came back and I was blown away with the standards that were there, from the older cohort but also the younger lads, what they were pushing on, and they were making the standards. They were the standard bearers, and coming back into such a competitive squad, it was amazing, and that's when I sort of knew this is our year. And we were obviously at the league. It wasn't an easy sail by any means. It was a tough battles throughout the league, but we sort of knew something was brewing, and thankfully we hit a bit of form in the last couple of games, and we were able to get over the line.
We've seen the likes of Paul Mannion and Jack McCaffrey take extended breaks. For you, how important was it to take even those few months to go travelling to sort of recharge the batteries and come back in with a fresh mindset?
Yeah, it was, and look, I did come in. I came in rejuvenated and ready to rock, but the hunger was always there for me, and it was something. It was just a time in my career that I said I'd do a couple of weeks travelling, but I came back in, and the lads were in just such an amazing spot, and it sort of inspires you and motivates you to be the best player you can be, and thankfully that was enough to get out onto the pitch. But in fairness to the lads that have been putting in the tough yards, it wasn't an easy pre-season by any means, and to see even by the end lads bursting up forward and getting on the end of scores, just digging it deep, it paid dividends, all the hard work that was done in the early times of the year.
Your own role has obviously evolved. You've basically played everywhere from, it seems, 5 to 12 at various stages, even in matches. So what was your role over the last couple of games in particular? I was playing that wing back and sort of protecting the lads inside. It wasn't a set position by any means. It was just sort of, thankfully against Mayo, when you get the lead, you have the license just to sit back and you don't have to offer too much going forward, because the only way to get back into it is with a goal. But just sitting back and probably getting on more kick-outs, being a kick-out option more than anything else, and a transition player. But it was nice I started off a bit ropey yesterday with a wayward left-footed shot, but it was nice to get on the scoreboard as well, because when you see like Lee Gannon, Merch and John Smalls beside you, and they're getting forward every chance they get, and when you're not getting those opportunities, it's nice to be on the end of something. And the relationship you have with Stephen Cluxton on the kickouts is obviously incredibly important to the team. How do you practice that? Like, is that you actually at training sessions working specifically with him, or is that just kind of planned on the notice board? How does that work?
Yeah, like obviously there's a lot of work that's done on the training ground, and when you see a player win the kick out in space, it's credit to the other lads around. They've created the space, they've got out of the way, stuff like that. But Stephen, he'd be able to pinpoint anything in terms of kick out. So he's all you have to do is make a run. He puts in the bread basket. So look, yesterday it was just one of those days that sort of worked out for me in terms of kick outs. I was able to get on a few, but to Stephen and the other keepers, they've set the bar. They've literally made it to, you just make a run, they put it in your chest. So look, it was nice to be on the end of it, but it's credit to the other lads being able to create the space and make you the hero, as you say.
A lot of the players have spoken about the influence of the younger guys, because I guess we're focusing so much on the players that have won 9, but the likes of Lee Gannon, first All-Ireland, Cormac Costello, first starting in All-Ireland. Not every player in that panel has 9 All-Irelands, and for the last couple of years, I'd imagine for those guys it's been very difficult being in the shadows and the constant conversation of this great Dublin team that maybe people felt was gone.
Yeah, and when you look, when you see 9 All-Irelands, but you think there's a lot of lads in that group that have 0, like Lee Gannon, Darren Newcombe, Ross McGarry, stuff like that. But when you have that sort of experience with the hunger of the younger lads coming through, it sort of creates a special bond and a special unit. And yesterday it was just epitomised it in terms of the hunger still there from the older lads, and like sort of Mick Simons, James McCarthy, they're sort of hitting their prime at 35 years of age. So yeah, the younger lads, they're hungrier than ever, and they're ready to go again.
Do you think everybody's going to go one more time? Are you like already saying, come on, let's do this, this is pretty good?
Yeah, and now in fairness, nobody's asking those questions to the older lads. They're sort of, it's a time of celebration, but in the back of their heads they're probably like, I have one more year left. And I played with them for a good number of years now, so I'll be whispering in their ear, come on, one more year. But I will see. I don't think they've made a decision on whatever they're doing.
What's the plan for today?
So back to bed now for the next while, but now going to the hospitals now in the next few minutes, and then into Smithfield for the homecoming, so another special day ahead.
Well, listen, enjoy it, Brian. Congratulations, stunning performance, well done.
Thank you.
Paul Caffrey, Brian Howard actually is a really good case study. His form this year comes back to the level that it was when he burst on the scene, but fully integrated into a game plan, knows exactly what his role is there, and to have him as somebody who can sweep into midfield or can be an extra body running off a shoulder in the half forward line, while all the time using his football brain as a half back. It's they've managed his season brilliantly as well.
Yeah, he's a remarkable young guy, much admired by all. He's this uncanny ability to be so calm on the ball. He's a beautiful sidestep and really turns over the ball. So, he is, like Keane O'Sullivan played that role so well for so long. Then Johnny Cooper took it over. And Brian Howard has been a revelation this year in that, as that +1 defender sitting in front of full back line, just brilliant on the ball. And also a huge option for kickouts. He plays a lot of his club football at midfield for Raheny. Himself and Clucko seem to be very good mates off the pitch. I've seen them socialising with the age gap between them. It'd be quite unusual, but for some reason they hit it off very well. And I think, as a kick-out option, Brian was available all day yesterday, and Cluxon nailed a perfect performance in terms of, I think, 23 kick-outs and found the Dublin player every time. So, loads of little caveats in terms of, but Brian Howard was hugely important to that whole setup this year, the way it evolved.
We were talking about Dessie before we got Brian Howard there, and not many people would have the self-confidence to bring in somebody as high profile as Pat Gilroy. And I think it speaks to the absence of ego in a way.
No, look, Dessie, I was explaining, he deserves huge credit in the way this evolved the whole year. Like, there was a feeling in Dublin, after 2 semi-final defeats, that look, there was bits missing that weren't going to be replaced adequately enough by the young crew that were coming through, and we were just going to be a bit short. And maybe that was going to be the future for Dublin, getting to semi-finals and just being a little bit shy. But a big decision, to get Clucko back, and then David Hanlon was our club man in terms of Nafina. He's Dessie's club man also, and he was the one that lost out in terms of Evan Comfort coming back from injury. And then Clucko goes and proves what everybody thought, that he is the best keeper ever, has an outstanding season, and just everything seemed a little bit calmer when Cluxon got the jersey back, and all of a sudden things started to look a bit brighter. Plus, look, there was a huge X factor missing with Jack McCaffrey. He's so many people's favourite Dublin player. He just brings an excitement to the pitch and to the ground. And I think Dessie managed his game time magnificently. It would have been very simple to say, look, just throw Jack in from the start. I think when you tactically look at how Dessie managed his crew, and maybe looking at Jack O'Connor, how he managed his crew, you'll say Dessie won the battle hands down. He obviously dropped Kieran Kilkenny early in the season, got a good reaction out of him. Bugler was missing yesterday, and he was very much going to be in the frame for a starting lineup. But Paddy Small got promoted. Pascal had one of those wonder seasons 2 years ago. People were blaming him for the Mayo defeat. Got very little game time last year, and then he comes and has I call it a Ray Cosgrove season, where he just come in and shot the lights out. And little things that change games, like when Dublin needed to get Jack McCaffrey on the pitch yesterday. He was down in front of me in the Hogan, and he was warming up for quite a while, and there was quite a conversation going on the sideline, because they knew Jack was the man to bring in, but they didn't know who to take off. and it looked as if Lee Gannon might go up into the forwards again, and either Paddy Small or Pascal might be the one to come off at that stage. Neither of them were really firing, and then Pascal gets a brilliant interception off Gavin White. Paddy Small gets the goal, and the game changes, and Lee Gannon is the man to come off then. Jack comes in, and the rest just unfolds. Cormac Costello is the next man removed, having been man of the match in the semi-final. So small margins, big decisions. Dessie got them right yesterday. I think Jack O'Connor, maybe starting Stephen O'Brien, might have been. They got very little X factor coming into the game later on, and I think Dublin's impact, like they won that final 20 minutes 7-2, or so Dessie won the tactical battle as well as everything else, all the decisions he made all the way through, and I think he'll come out of this with really great credit on his side.
The one player you didn't mention there who brings a bit of X factor as well is Paul Mannion, who ended up as man of the match yesterday. And again, a million little things go into winning this, but if Mannion doesn't come back, I know he kicked a couple of wides, but he stepped up at the big moments again and again yesterday. Like, the importance of him to that forward line.
Yeah, look, everybody watching the club scene for the last couple of years, and Paul obviously made his own decision to step away and just play club football, and he went to America last year as well and had some time out. But he is the best club footballer as a forward out there for the last couple of seasons. He's just been doing it time and time again with Kilmacud. And like to see him having them clutch moments yesterday when, look, Cormac Costello, I think, carried the team in the semi-final to a certain extent. Paul Mannion carried the team yesterday with his contribution, and look, it will be said, and we said often, and it'll have to be repeated, but like Cluxton nailing them two with 45 and a long range free. Look, we didn't have a long range free taker on the pitch with Dean Rock obviously not starting this year, and maybe just them slightly outside Cormac's range. Big decision. Clucko adds 2 yesterday, and then Paul Mannion comes up with a 0-5 game yesterday. Guys that weren't there for the last 2 years, and I said Jack as well, having the touch of genius when he comes in and the excitement he brings to the stadium and all that. So, no, look, it has to be said, had them 3 players not come back, maybe we're talking about Kerry here today, not Dublin.
Yeah, the ability to convince them to come back, obviously they have to want it, but then when they come back, for them to be integrated into the team as seamlessly as they were, for McCaffrey not to like throw the toys out of the pram, it doesn't seem like that kind of character anyway, but for him to be kept in reserve and not start, like being able to manage all that, these are complex interpersonal relationships you're talking about with very, very experienced players.
Yeah, no, good point, Ger, and this is where Dessie must take an awful lot of the plaudits to manage the egos in the dressing room, and if it went wrong and Dublin didn't win, there would be a lot of people levelling criticism at Dessie's table today and saying, look, he went back to the future and he stopped Dublin progressing and bringing through the young fellas. All the decisions were geared around Dublin getting to where they got to yesterday, getting up the steps in Croke Park, and James McCarthy getting the chance to lift the Sam, and winner takes all in these conversations.
Yeah, it did sound like James McCarthy was talking about finishing up, and if that happens, fair enough. It's been a ridiculous career, literally an all-time great career. What's your sense about what comes next? Like, Dessie obviously was saying he's focused on the next cup of coffee, but
it's on everybody's lips that it was a big conversation post-match in the circles last night. Who'll go? Who'll stay? Will Dessie stay himself? Another part of this equation is John Costello is gone, like in October now, as the CEO of Dublin GA, and he'd be a hard act to replace himself. He's been a brilliant leader of Dublin, and maybe that might sit on Dessie's mind when he's deciding whether he's going to commit or not going forward. Dessie has given an awful lot to Dublin football. If you go back to when he would have taken over the development squad and bringing them through that team, the minor team, and then the 21. So Dessie put in an enormous amount of time into this whole equation, and I would say Dessie will be having a long hard look in terms of what he wants to do himself, and obviously if he decides to stay on, it becomes a different conversation. But I would think that, look, there's several of them players. It felt like Stephen Cluxton was having a a Jim Gavin moment yesterday. He didn't go up to lift up the Sam Maguire. He was the only player who didn't go up, but he walked nice and slowly behind over to the hill and had his moment. I seen him hugging his father. I just think, look, Stephen came back for one season and one season only. I can't see him playing on. Mick the Times at 35. Even James, I would think, could very well see Dean Rock. A lot of these guys just nice and quietly exiting over the winter with no big statements, no big fanfare. They came back to do what they did. They did it. They have their name etched in history. The oldest Dublin setup, nothing. And I think it'll be a private decision, but I would be shocked if several of them don't slip away quietly.
Yeah, and to even the lads who came back, is Mannion back for good, or is he just back for the year to do this one thing, or is he rejuvenated now with the time away? And is Jack McCaffrey back for good? I don't know, but there was definitely informed talk from some people that there was a possibility that some unexpected names might decide, I'm taking a year out here. I have been on the treadmill for 6, 7 seasons, 8 seasons in some cases, so some unexpected names might also not be available for selection next year.
Yeah, it's a fair point, Ger, and the commitment level that's required. You heard Brian Howard saying that he went travelling a bit with his girlfriend or whatever, and a lot of these guys have put an awful lot of their lives on hold. I know Dean Rock is getting married Saturday week. So life moves on. Careers have to be challenged and worked at. These fellas, it's such a commitment that they give to this cause. I think a lot of boxes are ticked after yesterday, Ger. And James McCarthy talks about the hurt and the 2 semi-finals that were left behind now, as it appears, and them getting it together and giving it one final push. And that's what it was all about this year. And so I think in the moments and the weeks that come ahead, I think there will be a lot of fellas who will look at it and say, you know what, can I do it any better? Can I get any more out of this? And so I think if one goes, you might have 5 going. That's the way I see it.
Yeah. All right, Paul, we'll leave it there. Great stuff. Thanks a million.
Cheers, lads. Thanks. See you then.
Enjoy the celebrations.
It was a great video. Jack McCaffrey, I don't know if you saw it, losing his shit as James McCarthy lifts the trophy. He's down in the dugout and goes, literally, he's all out there.
I said this after the hurling. There's always a pang of jealousy when the bunting explodes. Did some randomer have fireworks on the hill? It seemed that way.
I think so, yeah.
And that everybody seemed to take their cue from that, and everything went off a little bit earlier this time than last time.
I thought the bunting went when they lifted the trophy.
Yeah, I did too, yeah. But I think that some randomer was with the fireworks on the hill. And sure, look.
A bit of Aslan when they won.
Yeah.
All added to it.
Yeah.
No jealousy here, Jerry.
Oh, totally, yeah. You're never going to get to experience this, Nathan. Me neither.
I think there's far more chance of me experiencing it than you experiencing it.
So you've been banging on about that for a very long time, Nathan, and it hasn't happened yet. So
one of these days, one of these days, I'll be in here as insufferable as you can be. We'll be going to the Mayo Hotel.
Oh, you won't even come in that day.
No, I'll be in the background.
It's never going to happen.
Fall asleep in
It's never going to happen.
Ireland team is in.
Yeah,
Ireland team is in. 2 changes. So Lily Agg gets her first start in midfield, and Heather Payne is back fit and will start on the right. So Anya Gorman drops out and Lucy Quinn drops out of the side again. So it is Courtney Brosnan in goal. The same back 3 of Niamh Fahey, Louise Quinn and Megan Connolly. It'll be Heather Payne on the right, Katie McCabe captains the side on the left. Looks then like it might be Rusha Littlejohn and Lily Agg in the middle of midfield, with Denise O'Sullivan playing a bit further forward alongside Sinead Farrelly and just in behind Ciara Caruso. Hopefully it is O'Sullivan a bit further forward. I think Linda Gorman was saying that Nigeria is so strong in the middle of midfield. Maybe she'll try and get 3 in there, but I think if you've got Denise O'Sullivan and Sinead Farrelly close together in an advanced position, that Ireland are going to be a lot better on the ball.
It's interesting from Dessie saying there was conversations happening before the wedding as well, so obviously things have been ramped up.
Yeah. Also, if you're Dessie, you want to make sure that you're very involved in these conversations. That the lads got together and decided Cluxton was going to come back. No, I'd been in touch. We were constantly in contact. Because it's Cluxton and everything with Cluxton is so bizarre. He doesn't go up and lift the trophy. Even the photographs that's on the back of all the papers with the 3 lads who won the 9. I don't know if you saw the video of it. They come over then and go, "Here's the trophy." Put the trophy in the middle of 3, and he just walks off.
Right.
He won't hold the trophy. He will not hold the trophy.
What's it about? Do we know?
I don't know.
It's going to be a good book if it ever gets written.
It'll never get written. Will it ever get written? It'll never get written.
Now's the time, right? Write the book. Tell us what was going on.
Yeah. So, but to come back after being gone for 2 years in your 40s
and to be
that good,
it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't.
Like the 245s are just never in doubt.
And no, that was the thing. It was such a calming.
But he has changed my impression of 45s forever. Like 45s are difficult.
When we were kids, it was 50-50.
Yeah, whereas now I judge everybody on Cluxton. It's like, missed opportunity, simple free. You tap that over the bar every time.
The Kildare 98 team would tell you that one of their free tickets would have gone, it's bonus territory if you kick a 45. Bonus territory. And they were like, what are you talking about? Like, it really isn't. You're supposed to score them. It's like, it's bonus territory. Nobody expects you to do it. Now it's like, can't be missing them. So, we would love to hear from some Kerry people. I mean, I presume it's too soon, too raw today, but maybe we'll get to talk to some of you tomorrow about what happened.
You met the prodigal son, I see.
I did, yeah. Owen Sheehan's back in the country, alive and well.
How was he? Remember, he was having the time of his life. He was in somewhere in Colombia enjoying himself, and he decided to fly home from that good stuff because Kerry were going to win the All Ireland. He flew, spent thousands and thousands of euro, ruined the best time of his entire existence, all because he thought Kerry were going to win the All Ireland.
Yeah. You got to be there, you know. You get kicked out of the Kerry Mafia WhatsApp group if you don't show up to the game.
Right. How's the Kerry Mafia WhatsApp group been?
I got kicked out.
Got kicked out,
yeah. I was only there momentarily,
right.
Long enough for them to gloat. I should mention before we go that we're heading to the Cork Podcast Festival on Sunday the 27th of August in the Cork Opera House. Special guest Jimmy Barry Murphy. More guests will be announced very soon. Do not miss out on a great night of conversation and crack in the heart of the Rebel County. For tickets, go to corkpodcastfestival.ie/off the ball, and it's off-the ball. On tomorrow's show, myself and Shane with you. We're going to have more reaction to the All-Ireland final right now. After the ads, more from yesterday's Sunday pay-per-view. Philip Lanigan and Mick O'Keefe joined Joe in studio. Have a magic Monday.
You're listening to OTB AM.
The atmosphere of all the Irish fans, and it was just incredible to see those green jerseys walking around like really and truly Irish fans.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts and download the OTB Sports app.
OTB AM,
the Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball.
I mentioned the front pages. It's amazing. Like maybe it's the time difference in Australia, or just you kind of had assumed that things were progressing between the FAI and Vera Pauw, but now all of a sudden it's front page and back page news that actually tomorrow's starting to look like Vera Pauw's last game, reading between the lines. So, front page of the Sunday Times, Pauw, I still have the backing of the players. Mark Gallagher has a big piece on the Mail on Sunday. FAI and players avoid the Pauw question. And David Kelly as well in the Sunday Independent has a big piece. So the short version is Jonathan Hill and the FAI are out there, but they're declining to talk to the media, even though they had said that they would talk to the media in Australia. This was always one of their go-to lines on the back of the Athletic piece, which blew up pre-World Cup, and they're not talking to the media. And then what seems to have happened over the last 24, 48 hours is that various players have been asked to give their backing to Pauw and have declined the opportunity to do so. Now, they certainly haven't said, we want rid of her, but they've said things like Louise Quinn, one of the more experienced players in the team, asked about Pauw. I haven't thought that much forward. I'm wondering what I'm having for lunch later, and I'm wondering what the schedule is for tomorrow. Kira Carusa, honestly, we're still at the World Cup. It's my first World Cup, and I think we owe it to ourselves to stay focused on that. Lily Agg, to be honest, I think that's something as players that we can't really think about. And Lucy Quinn, honestly, it's not something I'm thinking about. And I guess it chimes with Katie McCabe at that touchy enough press conference before the French game, where with Pauw sitting beside her, she was asked would she like to see Pauw there for the Nations League game in September, and she said that's not my job. So again, we could all be overreading into those dispatches, but equally I think in the main, when players are asked about a current manager, they tend to give a backing, would be my sense, of football players ad infinitum. They say, yeah, we love the manager, we want the manager to stay. That's certainly what happens around Stephen Kenny with the players. Pau, for her part, has said she feels that she thought things were progressing. She wants the contract sorted. Even in a kind of exchange with several journalists, she says, well, what have you heard about the contract, is kind of the tone. And she is adamant that she's still able to touch the players, to reach the players, is how she put it, and that maybe at 6 years there tends to be a bit of a fatigue factor between manager and players, but she, that's 2 years away, and she still feels that she's supported by the group, and she hopes things are sorted out. So that's kind of the summation across the three pieces. But it does, Philip, from kind of FAI, Vera's our woman, pre-World Cup, there seems to have been a genuine cooling, is the read on the journalists out in Australia over the last couple of weeks.
Absolutely, and in fairness, Mark Gallagher is out there for us, and there's a very comprehensive piece about the team and Vera in the future, and it kind of, even the headline nearly captures it. So what happens next? Eventful World Cup will be a trigger for change in personnel and approach. There doesn't seem to be any doubt there. So there is a real sense, and Mark goes through the kind of campaign from the negative sideshow before, like there's tactical confusion, and kind of gets into a bit of analysis which maybe looks at some of the shortcomings, sideline wise, tactical wise, setup wise, again mentioned selection issues, and the idea now that Ireland, this team, needs somebody to take the team to evolve the pattern of play and the style of play. And it's very much an open-ended question, but it doesn't really give you that sense that Vera Pau is going to be the one to do that. So yeah, isn't that
a big change with the mood we all thought was there 2 weeks ago?
It is, and I guess you'd trust the journalists who are on the ground over there probably get a much clearer sense than your once-off match and your very quick grab with the players about what's going on or around a camp. So when you're out there, you're probably hearing a lot of stuff that's not even printed. So I think the sense, we're all getting the sense that change could be happening where,
does that suggest it's off the field though? Because, and I don't know, but I'm just like a few of the pieces allude to FAI being deeply unhappy that, according to the Athletic, Pau almost initiated that Athletic piece which brought allegations to the fore again, and the FAI were really unhappy with that because, like, Paul Rowan says it would be extraordinary if the FAI was not to renew the contract of a manager who led Ireland to their first World Cup and remains popular amongst the general public.
And you mentioned the RT Personality of the Year thing last year as well.
Yeah. The defeat to Australia wasn't a 6-0 hammering. The performance against Canada was okay. Like, had the performance been so bad that the FAI have suddenly thought, well, this isn't working anymore?
There's a bit of this is, sports associations here, including the FAI in the past and including the RFU, have been criticised for renewing contracts under pressure from agents and managers ahead of World Cups, right? So there's an element of, I think, wait and see here. And I think the fact that there's a party line amongst players, even Vera Pau herself to a point, and the FAI, that look, we'll get to this after the World Cup, has actually causing the speculation even more, right? So she hasn't, in fairness, gone and put a gun to their head and said, here, you got to back me or I'm gone 3 weeks out from a World Cup, which would have been a really awkward situation. And I think the FAI have been quite measured, and they won't get credit for this, but there will be a review, and then after that review, I think everyone needs to take a step back. And we talked about this earlier, Vera Pau will go down in history as the person who brought us to a World Cup, and I think she's done a really good job. Is she the right person to take Ireland into the next generation and progress them further? I don't know. And that's the question they're going to have to ask themselves. And, none of the players are jumping up and down saying, I'm gone if she's not here either. So it's going to be an interesting one when they get back and they take the cold light of day, get out of the heat of the World Cup. I actually think it's a sensible thing to do, is to take stock and everyone do a very measured review and say, okay, well, is this the right person to take us forward? My own sense of it is that there's probably a conversation going on around, she got us this far. I actually personally think we've done quite well in the games, with the hand that she has. You need 5 Katie McCabe to get out of that group. We didn't get hammered. We were hoping for a draw against Australia. Canada was always going to be a stretch. The game, I think, that's going to determine, you talked about Dessie earlier, and the game is going to determine whether this was a successful World Cup or not, is can we get a result in the last game. If we get a draw or a win in the last game, I think people will reflect and say that was a pretty good outing, and that changed the dynamic of the conversation a bit. If we lose to a team that's ranked below us, I think that then people takes the gloss off it. But I have been really surprised at the uneducated, I'd almost say, criticism of some of the decisions that have been made. You know, like people are going on about in hindsight, oh well, she took this girl off, she took that girl off, or didn't start her, and like, yeah, well, we're not at training. We don't know who's playing well and who's not playing well, and who's carrying a niggle and who's not, and why decisions are made. I actually think she sets the team up very defensively in order to and try and play in a counter-attack and try and nick a goal, because I think she feels that that's the way we should play with the hand that she has, and that's fair enough. And she's the one who sees it on a day-to-day basis. Now I do get it that
but
there's
just on that, like the start of Mark's piece though doesn't really reflect great, saying that Heather Payne was struggling, the wing back's right thigh was heavily strapped, you know, and then all of a sudden 20 minutes before the game there's a change, you know, like
we don't know, right? And first to Mark, he's done a really good job in that, but we don't know, did they say we're just going to give you one last chance before the warm-up? If it goes, particularly with hamstrings. If you do your run before if you feel it, you're gone. And Anya was already told the day before, look, you're probably going to be playing. He does read like she was only told with 5 minutes notice. Well, who knows? I don't know.
I can't imagine that happening in Croker today, you know, one of the lads.
To be fair, but in fairness, like Keane Lynch hobbled into how many All-Ireland finals under the greatest manager we've ever seen, maybe, and you know, his hamstring went after 15 minutes one game. You don't hold that out against Jim Gavin. I think that point is harsh. The general style of play, Louise Quinn up top as your kind of last 10-15 minutes hope and a prayer centre forward. To be fair to Pau, she is entitled to think, well, we're not good enough in possession to work through the lines methodically, and we're setting up defensively, we're staying in games, and us nicking a goal from a set piece, I feel that's the best way to win with this group. And as Stephen Kenny has found out, she may well be right about that, you know, like we maybe have a certain level. We do need more Denise O'Sullivan's, Katie McCabe's, Sinead Farrelly's.
The point in here is exactly like the men's team has been over the last 20 years, is they raise their game to play against better teams and struggle to break down weaker opposition. That's exactly the same as it's an age-old Ireland problem. I personally think this team is the pioneers, right, and they have inspired a generation, and I think the fact that they've performed respectfully and have done quite well, in fact, I think will inspire the next generation. If you look at the rankings of the Irish women's international teams, under 19, under 17, under 15, we tend to be, you know, top 16, top 10, top whatever. There's a generation coming that's better than this generation, and I suppose the question is who is the right? There's a big conversation with, you need a player pathway that has loads more girls playing, you need a better domestic league, we need 5 or 6 girls playing for Chelsea or Arsenal if we're going to get to the next level.
Is there
we're a tier 3 nation and we need to get to be a tier 2 nation. Is she the white woman? That's the question they have to ask themselves.
But again, given I would have thought Vera Pauw's helped make the Ireland team a much more attractive proposition, but is that kind of maybe working against her in a way that maybe the FAI are looking that now this team is well branded, well supported, and that now the cast of candidates maybe would be very different than if you roll back a couple of years ago.
That's a fair point. How significant do you find the players kicking to touch? All of them. Not insignificant.
But maybe it's a drill, you know, like maybe that's the party line and it's been spelled out. But like you say, players generally, you know, again, you mentioned Stephen Kenny, what happens there? Players, if they tend to, when they want to, speak their mind as well. So, but look, maybe they've had the conversation previously that this is going to come up, and you know, so. But
it is interesting, and it'll be more interesting when the review is done, because, you know, to be fair to the FAI, like, they are going to go through a rigorous process, I'd imagine, afterwards, and all the players will be interviewed. And is it better that they air their, if they've grievances or if they've got things they want to say in private and not, but all this is done is because nobody is confirming or denying the contractual situation. The FAI have kicked it to post-tournament. Obviously the players have been told kick everything to post-tournament as well, and people sit down in a measured way, and it's a big call, but it is about the future and who's the person to take the next generation forward. But there is a huge, like, women's soccer it reminds me of women's Gaelic 20 years ago. It's like a absolute about to burst, you know, and it's brilliant, and it's great to see.
Yeah, I would think come September at Aviva Stadium they'll be getting great crowds.
I hope so.
You know, there'll be big events. A couple of other quick pieces before we finish up. So on All-Ireland winners. I guess a slight problem with the calendar is you go from one All-Ireland final into the next, and there's almost not much time for a kind of a recap. So Michael Dignan and Mick Foley writing about Limerick, for instance, and it almost feels just slightly dated because the football final is today. You know, it feels like this was last month, which is the way your brain tends to work. So he's just as in awe as everybody. He says 2020 decided they put 30 points on Waterford. 2021 obliterated all manner of scoring records by hammering Cork, and they racked up 332, 318 of that in the first half. 318 in the first half. I'd forgotten that. 2022 broke the 30-point mark by scoring 131 to beat Kilkenny, the first 3 in a row. 30-point mark again in Sunday's 4 in a row against Kilkenny. Truly remarkable, especially with just 5 points to their name after 30 minutes. So he's completely blown away. And Mick Foley, I think, rightly makes the point in the Sunday Times that usually when you do the 4 in a row, none of us remember Cork in the 40s, obviously, or Kilkenny latterly. It kind of feels like, wow, like that is just such an achievement. Whereas in this Limerick team's case, it feels like almost a placeholder, or like a midpoint of a journey is the extraordinary thing. And he wonders the greatest ever. And he says, of the 5 teams in hurling and football that earned a shot at 5 in a row before Limerick, only 3 made the All-Ireland final. 2 of them, the Kerry footballers against Offaly and Kilkenny against Tipperary, they were eventually broken by the accumulated strain of the year itself, and teams groomed specifically to beat them over a number of years. And he reckons that, frankly, that's not the case here with Limerick. As Kilkenny set out for the 5 in a row in 2010, Tip had created doubt. Has any team created serious doubt over Limerick's prospects this time?
But how fickle we all are, right? You know?
I know.
2 months ago, everyone said they were back in the pack.
They were 1 point away from going out.
They were there for the take. They were there for the take, and they were creaking at the seams, and they couldn't play without Declan Hannon, and they couldn't do this, and they couldn't do that.
Does it feel now Munster is their biggest obstacle?
100%, but I think the analysis has sprung from they were just so awesome in the second half, and then it automatically turns to 5-0. There was a lot of chatter about 5-0 when Kilkenny did 4 back in the day, if you remember.
But we knew we were headed for a Tip final, and it was going to be an epic.
Yeah, but
Tip were there. Who's there for Limerick?
Look at Munster next year, right? 2 defeats, and you're on you're hanging on by your fingernails, right? Could Clare beat them next year? You could see it happening. Could Cork beat them next year? You could see that. My Tip surprised them. You could see that. So you could be in a situation where they could be hanging on to get out of Munster.
Who are your favourites for the All-Ireland next year?
Well, right now you can't. But I
take your point.
I don't subscribe to the theory that that they're now going into this new stratosphere. I thought they were amazing on the day. I do think teams will improve. I do think teams will start catching up.
I don't know.
It's not written in the stars they're going to do 5 in a row.
It's not, but the idea of teams catching up, we had the very same conversation at the final whistle, Joan Croker last week, kind of saying Munster need to take them out of the equation, because if they get through, they have the time to recalibrate and get better again. Because what they achieved this year, if you think without Declan Hannon captain and Sean Finn the best man marker, like he would have been probably marking Owen Cody, who was sensational in the first half. Declan Hannon is like their equivalent of a false 6, like he just plays and drifts and drops and links the whole place. So to take those out of the equation and casually win as they won without Cian Lynch, a 2-time hurler the year previously, like they've actually had all the blows. Like imagine what it'd be like if they actually have an All-Ireland where they have a full strength team, and it's just the age profile. The age profile is the kind of the real thing,
and also with Moyles on the clock. Like they've been playing at that level for so long. Like at this point, would you back against them? No. And when the going got tough, they just stepped up to a whole different level. In saying that, they could have come third in Munster, right, and have to go the hard way. They went the direct route, which can suit teams that are on the road a long time. I think teams are catching up. I just think they were so awesome in the final that it's probably coloured our view of
well, sure, that debate was going on immediately. Are they the greatest? And Kilkenny won 6 and 7 years, so kind of team that has
the best team I've seen.
I put it this way, I agree with everything you said, Mick. I think you're spot on. I think though, if Limerick get back into an Ireland final, I wouldn't with my life think about it. Like they're going to win by 10. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Once they're in a final, they seem to just rise to the occasion like nobody's business. But it's a long road to a final.
I don't know if I've ever seen a team, because you can compare great teams, but when Kilkenny team were winning, they won nearly every which way, but they were the kind of dominant team. But Limerick, to kind of be able to transform mid-match, I've rarely seen a team be absolutely battered. They were 10 down in the Munster final a few years ago. I remember being down there against Tipperary. Tipperary played them off the pitch, so 10 down on a soaring hot day, came out and it was over within about 14 minutes. And they did it 25 minutes into both. Like they're down by 6 points to Galway. So to be able to be playing badly and kind of recalibrate even without a half-time break and find your way, and then suddenly hit a level that's 3 gears above what they've been shown for half an hour, like that's very rare of a team to.
It's often said it's hard to switch it on mid-game if you don't start right. It's one of the great cliches. Limerick have been, I was reading the stat, bar their first game against Clare, they've been behind at half-time in every single game of this championship.
That's incredible.
Isn't it just?
It is incredible. But it was at the game itself, there was very strong wind, which actually I don't think people factored in watching on the telly. And when they did get it, but I've never seen a team at that level steamroll a team. Even the Dublin footballers, they're shoot. But even it was like this tsunami of just aggression and brilliance. They just kind of swept over Kilkenny, and they just couldn't cope. They were just long, and two teams at an elite level, and one just absolutely.
And Kilkenny are the hardest physically and mentally. You would have thought
they're hard to break.
They don't. They don't snap.
They don't
and
either,
they were very.
So it's not like you're going up against a team that's a little bit shaky on the confidence side.
Waterford in 08. It's our first time
they
here.
They get startled by the lights and
but Peter Casey, like the shooting, Dermot Burns again from the Hogan stand side, we're looking down level at him, and the arc of the ball from 100 metres, he's pinging shots. But Peter Casey hit one, and there was a brilliant photograph taken of him off balance. I think nearly 1 foot, standing almost on the Croke Park side around the halfway, and the caption was "This ball goes over the bar." It was just incredible. And again, the wind in Croker doesn't blow in a straight direction because of the horseshoe effect. It swirls. It was a wet day, so the display of shooting and accuracy. Again, the only thing that I've seen compares is Kilkenny's in that final. So no wait against Waterford. Where the first wide, I think they were slagging Martin Comfort for hitting the first wide the game and midway through the second half, was it? So it was
a different standard. We are pretty much out of time. We picked out a few pieces on what's going on in Saudi Arabia and the world of football, but we don't quite have time to get into them. There's a great piece, Rob Draper in the Mail is writing about Middle East, and Jonathan Wilson, Cash is King. And if you see it on page 14 of the Sunday Times, it's worth looking into. It's about the most influential agent in Mbappe's team, his mum.
Oh, it's very good, yeah.
It's really good. I hadn't realised that she was there pulling the
Saudi article is quite good. We did find, we did have a little chuckle outside with Pep Guardiola giving out about the new money coming into football from Saudi Arabia.
The irony.
No, it was quite something. He said it with a straight face, Pep, apparently. Millions destroying the game.
This new money destroying the game, yeah.
By the way, the Business Post, I think our guests, I must start pointing them more in the direction of the Business Post, which is doing sport now on a routine basis, but they had a by the numbers on All-Ireland final weekend. So the value of the All-Ireland final to the hospitality sector is €10 million for today, and Dublin fans being the decider means that fewer fans are leaving the capital, so pubs and restaurants have a great day. So 10 million quid pumped into the economy. The gate is 7 million, which is serious going.
But it could be so much more if we had that weekend, right?
Yeah,
that's
you could double those numbers.
But this Post has been really good, and Emmett does a bit, and there's a couple of others in the Business Post. I think it's interesting that nobody has mentioned the fact that there's a very strong likelihood that this 5 FAs bid for Euro 28 as well. You see Turkey look like they might be going in with Italy. That's still TBC around how that plays out, but that's going to be very interesting how that plays out over the next couple of months, and fantastic news for the football associations, and I think for football. I am promised a point if I mention there's a couple of very good quotes from Kelly O'Keefe there in the Business Post.
Just 1 pint.
This is how you become a mover and a shaker in the world, and what are they about? about
GA Go.
Oh yeah, in favour or not in favour?
In favour, yeah.
In favour, okay, very good.
We'll do another separate segment on that, but yeah, fair play. I'd be fully behind that. Just a couple of other quick things. Roy Curtis has a lovely personal piece about kind of Kerry Dublin rivalry and the kind of personal relationships, and there's a nice piece with John Keenan, the hurling ref, Dermot Crowe. There's a nice personal piece about his journey, and obviously he has to kind of head off into the sunset now or hang up the whistle after refereeing the All-Ireland final, so they're worth checking out as well.
Okay, very good, fellas. Thanks so much. I think you're both shooting to Croke Park, are you?
Yes. I'm going home to pack the car up and then going to Croke Park.
Excellent. Well, listen, enjoy. It should be an epic. Mick O'Keefe here in studio and Philip Lanigan as well. Thank you, fellas. Appreciate it.
OTB AM.
The Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball.